Tonight, we're examining the complete history of every dark wizard in the Harry Potter universe. This is a fascinating topic, but I'll keep my narration calm to ensure you can still drift off to sleep. Thank you to those of you who've been joining us consistently. If you're falling asleep with us tonight, let me know in the comments how many nights in a row you've been here. And if this is your first night, just comment night 1. Now back to the video. Imagine a shadow stretching across 10 centuries of magic, a darkness so profound that it did not simply begin with a boy who had a lightning bolt scar, nor did it end with the fall of a tyrant in a castle courtyard. To understand the true nature of evil in the wizarding world, we have to look far beyond the names whispered in fear during the 20th century. We have to travel back to a time when the very foundations of magic were being forged in blood and obsession. For over 1,000 years, a lineage of sorcerers has sought to push the boundaries of the possible, disregarding the cost to their souls and the lives of those around them. This is not just a story of individual villains, but a chronicle of a corrupting force that has mutated and evolved through the ages. We often think of dark magic as a set of forbidden spells, but for the wizards we are about to discuss, it was a philosophy, a religion, and a desperate quest for immortality. It began with ancient pioneers like Herpo the Foul, a man who looked at the natural order of life and death and decided it did not apply to him. He was the first to realize that the soul could be shattered and that a serpent could be bred to kill with a single glance. From those early experimental days in ancient Greece, the infection of dark magic spread across Europe, manifesting in different forms depending on the era. In the Middle Ages, it was the raw, brutal violence of warlords like Emer the Evil, who turned the southern coast of England into a graveyard. In the Renaissance, it was the intellectual depravity of Godelot, who didn't just want to kill, but wanted to document the very mechanics of suffering. As we journey through this 1,000-year timeline, the rise of the unforgivable curses and the desperate attempts by the Ministry of Magic to contain a tide that refused to be stemmed. The creation of Azkaban, a place so saturated with the madness of its creator, Echrisdis, that the very walls seemed to breathe with the despair of the forgotten, how the ideology of pure blood supremacy was weaponized, turning ancient families into breeding grounds for hate. And finally, we arrive at the modern titans of terror. Gellert Grindelwald, the silver-tongued revolutionary who dreamt of a world where wizards ruled over muggles for the greater good, and Lord Voldemort, the ultimate expression of magical ego, a man who feared death so much that he became something less than human. Why does this history matter? Because the darkness never truly disappears. It only waits for a new hand to pick up the wand. By looking at every dark wizard who ever left a mark on history, we can see the patterns that repeat. We can see how power corrupts, how fear motivates, and how the smallest choices can lead to the greatest catastrophes. We will explore the secrets of the Horcrux, the mystery of the Elder Wand, and the tragic falls of those who might have been heroes if they hadn't succumbed to the allure of the dark arts. We are diving into a world of cursed objects, ancient basilisks, and the chilling silence of the Inferi. This is the definitive account of the shadows that have haunted the wizarding world for a millennium. Let us begin our descent into the annals of magical evil, starting at the very beginning, with the birth of the dark arts themselves. The history of magic is often told through the lens of its triumphs, its inventions, and its great protectors. We hear of the founders of schools, the creators of life-saving potions, and the diplomats who forged peace between magical and non-magical peoples. But beneath that polished surface lies a much more jagged and uncomfortable truth. For every Albus Dumbledore, there has been a wizard of equal or greater ambition who chose to walk a path of isolation and cruelty. These figures are not outliers. They are an integral part of the magical ecosystem, representing the extreme consequences of what happens when talent is untethered from morality. As we look back over the last 1,000 years, we find that the definition of a dark wizard has changed. In the earliest days, it was often defined by the creation of dark creatures or the manipulation of the dead. There was a raw, elemental quality to their magic. As society became more structured, the darkness became more political and more calculated. The dark wizards of the 18th and 19th centuries were often masters of social engineering, using the imperious curse to pull the strings of government from the shadows. By the time we reached the 20th century, the dark wizard had become a cult leader, a figurehead for a movement that sought to reshape the entire world in their image. This long-form exploration will take us into the damp cells of medieval dungeons and the opulent drawing rooms of pure blood manors. We will examine the artifacts they left behind, the grimoires bound in human skin, the jewellery infused with lethal hexes, and the wands that changed hands through murder. We will ask the questions that the history books often skip over. What drove a young, brilliant student like Tom Riddle to abandon his humanity? How did a fortress like Azkaban come to exist in a world that prides itself on justice? And what is the true cost of seeking to master death? The stakes could not be higher. The history of dark wizards is the history of the wizarding world's greatest failures and its most terrifying close calls. It is a reminder that the line between a great wizard and a dark one is often thinner than we would like to admit. It is a journey through the darkest corners of the human and inhuman psyche. So as the lights dim and the world outside fades away, prepare yourself. We are going back to the dawn of dark magic to meet the man who first broke his soul, and we won't stop until we reach the final stand at the Battle of Hogwarts. This is the complete history of every dark wizard, 1,000 years of evil, documented and revealed. As dark magic begins where the natural flow of wizarding power ends, twisting the very essence of a wizard's soul into something unrecognizable, something hungry. At its core, dark magic defies the harmonious balance that defines all other spells. It's not merely the incantations that inflict pain or bend wills, though those are its most infamous tools. No, it's the deliberate perversion of magic's intent, drawing on hatred, domination, and an insatiable thirst for control. When a wizard channels this force, it doesn't just strike outward, it seeps inward, corroding the soul like acid etching stone. Imagine the first time a curious mind whispers Avada Kedavra, feeling that rush of unchallenged power. The curse flies true, but in that moment, a fragment of the caster's light dims. Empathy frays at the edges. What starts as a single act becomes a compulsion, the soul fracturing under the weight of its own darkness, until the wizard stares into a mirror and sees not a person, but a shadow craving more. This corruption manifests slowly at first, a whisper in the mind that justifies every escalation. The wizard's thoughts sharpen into obsessions, their magic growing potent, yet brittle, laced with malice that poisons even their dreams. Historians of the magical world speak of it as an addiction far deadlier than any potion, one that warps virtues into vices. Loyalty becomes fanaticism, intelligence twists into cunning cruelty, and the soul, once whole and radiant, splinters irreparably, echoing with the screams of its victims long after the spells fade. Those who delve deepest rarely emerge unchanged. They become vessels for malevolence, their humanity sloughing away like dead skin. You can trace this poison back over 2,000 years, a relentless thread of magical malevolence weaving through the ages, from forgotten lairs in antiquity to the shadowed halls of modern ministries. It predates the founding of Hogwarts by centuries, lurking in the experiments of those bold enough or foolish enough to challenge death itself. Before the Common Era, in eras when dragons still roamed unchecked and ancient runes held secrets now lost, the first dark wizards emerged, their innovations birthing abominations that haunted generations. This timeline unfolds like a gathering storm, sporadic tyrants in the shadows of history, building to the regulatory clamps of the 17th century, then exploding into the cataclysms of the 20th. 2 millennia of spells that scarred the earth, cursed bloodlines, and toppled empires, all born from that same soul-deep corruption. What drives a wizard down this path? Peel back the robes of power, and you'll find a profile etched in universal fears and desires. Ambition burns brightest among them, a fire that starts as aspiration, but consumes everything in its path. These are souls who see the world's wonders, not as gifts to cherish, but as obstacles to conquer, their talents demanding supremacy at any cost. Then there's the terror of death, that primal dread gnawing deeper than any curse. Immortality beckons not as a philosophical pursuit, but a frantic grasp at eternity, through forbidden rituals, soul-splitting artifacts, or pacts with the infernal. They cannot abide the fade into oblivion. Power becomes their anchor against the void. Yet perhaps most insidious is their invocation of the greater good, a phrase draped like a cloak over rivers of blood. They envision utopias forged in tyranny, a world purified by their vision, muggles subjugated for the sake of progress, rivals eliminated to prevent chaos. Grindelwald preached it from pulpits of flame, promising wizard-kind salvation through domination. Others cloak personal vendettas in noble rhetoric, convincing themselves, and sometimes legions, that their atrocities pave the road to paradise. This self-deception accelerates the soul's decay, turning monsters into martyrs in their own twisted tales. Across 2,000 years, these traits recur like a dark incantation, binding Herpo the Foul to Emer the Evil, Godelot to Grindelwald, and culminating in the unparalleled horror of Voldemort. Each saw themselves as saviours, their corruption a necessary evolution. But the soul remembers, it rebels in whispers, in the madness that claims them, in the downfall that always follows. And it all traces back to the very first, the pioneer of basilisks and Horcruxes, whose foul experiments ignited this endless saga. In the next chapter, Herpo the Foul and the First Abomination, we'll descend into his lair and uncover the serpent that started it all. What horrors did he unleash that echo through every dark wizard since? That 2,000-year timeline of magical malevolence we traced last time finds its shadowy origin in a single man, the first whose name history dares to record as a dark wizard, Herpo the Foul. Born in the sun-baked hills of ancient Greece, where olive groves whispered secrets to the wind and the Aegean Sea crashed like forgotten spells against jagged shores, Herpo lived centuries before the Common Era dawned. He wasn't born to power or privilege, but to a restless curiosity that twisted into something profane. Wizards of that era practiced magic in hidden groves, blending potions from herbs that bloomed under moonlight and charms drawn from the stars' alignments. Herpo, though, sought more. He delved into the forbidden, experimenting with forces that no sane mage would touch, pushing the boundaries of life and death until the veil between them frayed. Ancient Greece, the life and experiments of the first recorded dark wizard. Picture the acrid smoke rising from his isolated workshop, a cavern carved into a mountainside near Delphi, where oracles once communed with gods. Herpo spent decades there, his skin etched with runes that glowed faintly in the dark, testing spells on captured beasts and unwitting travellers. He brewed elixirs from the venom of vipers and the hearts of ravens, seeking not just power, but dominion over nature itself. Muggles spoke of him in terrified tales around campfires, calling him the Foul One for the plagues that swept villages after his visits, curses that withered crops and twisted limbs into grotesque parodies of flesh. Yet among wizards, his reputation grew like a storm cloud, for he uncovered rituals lost to time, binding spirits to clay vessels and coaxing shadows to do his bidding. His experiments escalated, each failure fueling a deeper hunger until he crossed into territories that would echo through millennia. It was in this cauldron of obsession that Herpo achieved his breakthrough discovery of the basilisk, hatching the chicken's egg under a toad. You can almost smell the fetid air of that chamber, thick with the musk of damp earth and decaying feathers. He began with a simple farmyard egg, laid by a hen under a blood moon, its shell veined with unnatural cracks. Placing it beneath the bloated belly of a toad, chosen for its cold-blooded resilience and affinity for hidden places, Herpo chanted incantations in a tongue older than Homer's epics. Days turned to weeks as the toad sat motionless, its throat pulsing with dark energy infused by Herpo's wand. The egg trembled, then split not with a chick's peep, but a hiss that curdled the blood. From it slithered the first basilisk, its scales gleaming like polished obsidian, the eyes yellow slits promising death to any who met their gaze. This serpent king grew rapidly, its breath a venom that corroded stone, its stare turning flesh to stone in moments. Herpo commanded it with a milk-toothed rooster's crow as countercharm, a vulnerability he jealously guarded. That basilisk, some historians whisper, may have slithered through centuries to coil in Salazar Slytherin's Chamber of Secrets, its lineage a thread of terror unbroken. But Herpo's ambition knew no satiation. The ultimate taboo, how Herpo created the first ever Horcrux and survived physical death. In the dim flicker of tallow lamps, surrounded by scrolls brittle with age, he pondered immortality's cruel jest, wizards aging to dust while their magic endured. He turned to a rite so abhorrent it was myth even then, the deliberate murder of a soul pure innocent, a young priestess from a nearby temple, her life snuffed by a curse that shattered his own spirit. In that fracture, Herpo anchored a piece of his soul to an object, a golden locket etched with serpentine motifs, pulsing with stolen vitality. The process ravaged him, his body withered, skin sloughing like parchment, eyes sinking into hollows. Yet when death clawed at his throat, it recoiled. His consciousness lingered, bound beyond the flesh, whispering through the winds of Greece, long after his corpse crumbled to dust. He became a spectre, haunting his own creations, guiding future dark wizards in dreams, his essence defying the grave. Herpo's abominations set the template for all who followed, proving dark magic's seductive promise of eternity at the cost of one's humanity. That basilisk's legacy slithers onward, its secrets uncoiling further in our next chapter, the serpent's legacy, where one serpent's shadow reshapes history in ways you won't see coming. That basilisk Herpo the Foul, hatched in the shadowed groves of ancient Greece, didn't vanish into the mists of time. No, it endured, a living nightmare, coiled through centuries, its venomous gaze passing like a cursed heirloom from one twisted mind to another. Historians whisper that this very serpent, or one descended from its lethal brood, found its way into the heart of what would become Hogwarts Castle, carried there by none other than Salazar Slytherin himself during the school's founding around the 10th century. You can almost feel the chill of those early medieval winds sweeping across the Scottish Highlands as the four greatest witches and wizards of their age converged to build a sanctuary for young magic. Godric Gryffindor, Helga Hufflepuff, Rowena Ravenclaw, and Salazar Slytherin. They poured their visions into the stone, crafting towers that pierced the storm clouds, and halls echoing with the first spells of children. Slytherin, though, brought something far more sinister than stone or spellwork. Born into an ancient line of pure-blood wizards who traced their magic back to the Salazar line in medieval England, he arrived with eyes sharp as serpent fangs, already harbouring suspicions about the world beyond wizardkind. At first, their unity held. They debated endlessly by roaring fires, agreeing on the need to hide magic from Muggle eyes amid the chaos of Saxon invasions and Norman conquests. Hogwarts rose as a beacon, its foundations warded against prying torches and iron blades. Slytherin's contributions were unmatched. His serpentine affinity allowed him to charm the lake's depths, coaxing merpeople into uneasy alliances, and instill the castle's plumbing with hidden passages known only to his house. But beneath this collaboration, a rift simmered, fed by whispers of Muggle-born students arriving with no lineage to boast, their magic raw and unrefined in his eyes. As decades turned to generations, Slytherin's disillusionment festered. He watched Muggle-born witches and wizards flood the halls, their presence diluting what he saw as the sacred blood of true magic. Reports from the wider world reached him: witch hunts in Europe, accusations of sorcery leading to burnings at the stake. To Slytherin, these weren't random cruelties, but proof of Muggle inferiority, a threat that demanded separation. His debates with the other founders grew heated, voices echoing off the Great Hall's enchanted ceiling. Gryffindor championed bravery in all bloods, Hufflepuff loyalty without prejudice, Ravenclaw wit unbound by birth. Slytherin? He argued for purity, for a wizarding elite untainted by those he called mudbloods, stealing magic they could never fully claim. This descent into radicalism marked a pivotal turn in dark wizardry's evolution. Where Herpo had revelled in raw experimentation, hatching abominations from eggs and toads for the sheer thrill of forbidden power, Slytherin twisted that legacy into ideology. No longer was it about personal conquest through monstrous creations. Now it fueled a supremacist creed, one that would poison Slytherin House for centuries. He saw the basilisk not as Herpo's grotesque pet, but as a divine enforcer, a weapon to purge the unworthy and preserve the bloodline. In secret, as his arguments with the founders reached a breaking point, Slytherin acted. Deep within the castle's bowels, he laboured alone, his wand tracing runes in damp stone, while the basilisk slithered at his heels, its scales scraping like whispers of doom. The Chamber of Secrets took shape, a vast, submerged hall lined with serpentine carvings, accessible only through a sink in the girls' bathroom, its entrance hissing open to Parseltongue commands. He embedded statues of himself, regal and unyielding, their eyes fixed on a central pit where the basilisk would slumber until summoned. This wasn't mere architecture, it was a doomsday vault designed to awaken the serpent should Hogwarts ever fall to Muggle-born invaders. Slytherin vanished before the chamber's completion, leaving behind a locket bearing his mark, but his venom lingered in the walls. Imagine the dust settling in those early years after his departure, the other founders sealing away his secrets, hoping his radical fire would fade. Yet the basilisk stirred on, through failed heirs and hidden plots, its yellow eyes gleaming in the perpetual gloom. Slytherin's construction ensured his legacy endured, a serpent's promise of judgment coiled beneath the feet of every student. And this shift from Herpo's amoral tinkering to Slytherin's blood purity crusade ignited the ideological blaze that would consume so many dark wizards to come. Pure blood supremacy became the rallying cry, twisting experimentation into extermination. Creatures like the basilisk from tools of curiosity into symbols of ethnic cleansing. The chamber lay dormant for centuries, its stone guardians unmoving, but the ideology Slytherin seeded took root. Slytherin descendants schemed in shadowed common rooms, their green banners fluttering with ambition unchecked. Whispers of the heir, the one who would unleash the serpent, haunted prefects and Parseltongues alike. Even as Hogwarts thrived, the serpent's legacy pulsed like a hidden vein, connecting ancient Greece's foul experiments to the castle's very soul. But as the medieval shadows lengthened, darker forces stirred beyond Hogwarts wards. Tales of a wand that bent death itself, wielded by wizards whose evil eclipsed even Slytherin's hidden horror. Coming up next, Chapter 4. The Dark Ages and the Elder Wand, where you'll uncover how that legendary relic fueled an era of unrelenting terror. As Slytherin's serpentine legacy slithered into secrecy beneath Hogwarts, the wizarding world itself retreated deeper into shadows. Muggle wars and plagues ravaged the land, forcing wizards to cloak their existence more fiercely than ever. Castles crumbled, knowledge burned in monastery fires, and dark magic, far from fading, festered in hidden vales and forgotten forests. It was in this era of unrelenting gloom, sometime in the early medieval centuries, that three brothers emerged: Antioch, Cadmus, and Ignotus Peverell, whose encounter with death itself would birth the most coveted artifacts in wizarding history, the Deathly Hallows. Picture a narrow river cutting through a mist-shrouded valley, its waters black under a moonless sky. The Peverell brothers, powerful wizards all, approached its treacherous ford one fateful night. Death, personified in the wizarding tale, waited on the far bank, cheated by their cunning bridge of magic. Enraged yet bound by his own rules, Death offered each brother a gift from his trove. To Antioch, the eldest and most arrogant, went the Elder Wand. A wand of elder wood, its core a thestral tail hair, unbeatable in duel, promising dominion over any foe. Cadmus received the Resurrection Stone, a gem that could summon shades from beyond the veil, though never truly alive. And Ignotus, the wise youngest, claimed the invisibility cloak, flawless and eternal, woven from threads of shadow itself. These hallows, symbols of mastery over death, ignited a spark that would blaze through wizarding bloodlines for 1,000 years. The brothers scattered, their gifts hidden or passed in secrecy, but whispers spread like poison through alehouses and enchanted gatherings. Relics that could conquer mortality? Artifacts granting godlike power? The allure proved irresistible, especially the Elder Wand, which quickly became a magnet for the world's most violent sorcerers. Why duel with ordinary holly or yew when this prize ensured victory? Its legend alone drew the ruthless, berserkers of magic, who craved not just power, but the thrill of unchallenged supremacy. From the Peverells onward, the Wand's allegiance shifted only through conquest or death, or forging a bloody trail of succession that defined the medieval magical landscape. Antioch Peverell boasted of his weapon openly, dueling rivals in moonlit clearings until a stranger slew him in his sleep, claiming the wand as its new master. Generations blurred in a haze of ambushes and vendettas. By the 9th century, it fell to Godelot, a reclusive genius who penned Magick Moste Evile, filling its pages with curses that twisted flesh and shattered minds. Holed up in a Cornish manor, surrounded by bubbling cauldrons and the screams of test subjects, Godelot wielded the Elder Wand to perfect spells no sane wizard would touch. But ambition devours its own. His son, driven mad by envy, locked Godelot in the cellar beneath wards of unbreakable steel. As the father's pleas echoed into silence, the son pried the wand from his stiffening fingers, stepping out as the new Lord of Death. That cellar's damp chill seemed to seep into the wand's very grain, amplifying its call to killers. Challengers came from shadowed alleys of wizarding Paris, storm-swept Scottish highlands, even Byzantine bazaars where Vila whispered of its power. Each master strutted briefly, blasting dragons from the sky, toppling Muggle kings with invisible strikes before the next predator struck. Duels raged in ruined abbeys, wand-spitting green death under blood-red auroras. The wand passed through hands stained with basilisk venom and troll blood, its masters leaving trails of charred villages and orphaned apprentices. No treaty or truce could halt it. The allegiance demanded proof of dominance, often spilled across snow or stone. You can almost hear the incantations echoing through those centuries, the crack of splintering wood, the final gasps of the fallen. This relentless churn elevated dark wizards above their peers, turning the Elder Wand into a crown for the cruelest. It wasn't mere wood and core. It embodied the Peverell's defiance, a promise of invincibility that masked its true curse. Isolation in supremacy forever hunted. Medieval Europe became a chessboard of assassinations, alliances forged in blood, only to shatter at the wand's whim. Yet amid this carnage, one name looms larger on the horizon, a wizard whose reign of southern terror would etch the Elder Wand's legend into infamy forever. In our next chapter, Emeric the Evil and the Southern Terror, you'll discover how this savage upped the stakes like never before. Stay with me as the darkness deepens. That irresistible pull of the Elder Wand soon drew blood in the misty vales of medieval England, where shadows lengthened over ancient stone villages and whispered curses rode the wind like harbingers of doom. In the heart of those turbulent times emerged a figure whose name still chills the spines of wizarding historians. Emeric the Evil, a short-lived but exceptionally aggressive wizard whose reign of terror scorched the southern counties like a wildfire no rain could quench. You can almost feel the damp chill of those early medieval nights, can't you? Fog rolling thick from the Thames, cloaking hamlets in secrecy as Emeric strode forth, his robes tattered from ceaseless conquests, eyes gleaming with the wand's unholy fire. He wasn't born to power, he seized it, wresting the Elder Wand from a lesser sorcerer whose screams echoed through the Weald long after the duel ended. With that deathly hallow in his grasp, Emeric transformed ambition into annihilation, turning the wand into an extension of his venomous will. Picture the Southern Terror unfolding village by village. Emeric didn't whisper threats, he unleashed them. Rivals who once vied for dominance in the wizarding enclaves of Kent and Sussex found themselves targeted in the dead of night. A flick of the Elder Wand and curses tore through the air like vengeful lightning, splintering oaks and shattering thatched roofs. One by one, these wizards fell, the cunning alchemist of Dover reduced to ash mid-potion brew. The Rune Master of Winchester, his defences crumbling as invisible blades carved through his wards. Emeric slaughtered them mercilessly, their blood staining the chalk hills, consolidating power with a brutality that left no room for mercy or alliance. His aggression knew no bounds, spilling beyond wizarding circles into the muggle world he despised. Fields lay barren where his hexes struck, livestock twisted into grotesque parodies of life, and entire manors crumbled under waves of dark energy that rattled the very earth. Whispers spread among survivors. Emeric sought not just supremacy, but oblivion for all who opposed him. He amassed followers through fear alone, binding them with oaths forged in the wand's shadow, creating a fleeting empire of dread that stretched from the South Downs to the Solent shores. Yet for all his savagery, his rule hung by the thinnest thread, the wand's allegiance, ever fickle, ever hungry for fresh mastery. That thread snapped in a clash that historians recount with bated breath, a brutal duel with Egbert the Egregious that ended Emeric's reign of terror. It unfolded on a storm-lashed heath near what Muggles now call the Devil's Dyke, thunder cracking like the wand's own fury. Egbert, a towering wizard from the northern marches, had tracked Emeric for months, his own spells honed on the anvil of survival against lesser tyrants. Emeric struck first, the Elder Wand whipping forth a jet of green death that scorched the gorse black, but Egbert dodged, countering with a barrage of conjured chains that lashed like serpents. The air hummed with raw power, spells colliding in bursts of violet and crimson that lit the night like false dawns. Emeric laughed, a guttural, mad sound, as he unleashed waves of shattering force, boulders exploding into shrapnel that Egbert barely deflected with a shimmering shield. Blood slicked the mud as Egbert closed in, his blade-sharp curses slicing Emeric's arm, drawing first blood. Desperation fueled Emeric's final assault, a vortex of dark wind meant to rend flesh from bone, but Egbert was relentless. With a roar that drowned the tempest, he disarmed his foe, the Elder Wand spinning through the gale into his waiting hand. Emeric's end came swiftly then, a killing curse from his own lips rebounding in the wand's betrayal, his body crumpling amid the heather like a discarded puppet. Egbert claimed the prize, vanishing into legend, but the southern lands bore scars for generations, haunted groves where no bird sang, rivers that ran dark with lingering magic. Emeric's brief blaze had illuminated the Elder Wand's curse. Power granted, but always at the cost of the wielder's soul. As the echoes of that duel faded, the wand's bloody trail led northward, into the hands of scribes and scholars who twisted its might into forbidden tomes. That path darkens further in our next chapter, Chapter 6. Godelot and the Grimoire of Death, where a father's obsession births a book so vile it devours its creator from within. Stay with me as we uncover its pages. As the smoke cleared from Emeric's final rampage across southern England, and Egbert the Egregious wrenched the Elder Wand from his lifeless fingers, that legendary relic slipped into the shadows once more, its allegiance shifting like a serpent in the mist. For centuries, it passed through hands stained with ambition and blood, drawing the most ruthless minds to its unbeatable core. But by the 9th century, a new figure emerged from the annals of wizarding scholarship, one whose work would etch dark magic into a permanent, perilous codex. Deep in the fog-shrouded enclaves of medieval Europe, where candlelight barely pierced the gloom of stone-walled scriptoriums, lived Godelot, the 9th century scholar who codified dark magic in Magick Moste Evile. This wasn't some fleeting pamphlet of hexes scribbled in haste. It was a grimoire, a tome bound in materials whispered to be otherworldly, its pages filled with incantations so vicious they seemed to writhe under the reader's gaze. Godelot poured his life into it, distilling centuries of forbidden knowledge into spells that twisted the soul as much as the flesh. He documented curses that could unravel a man's mind, thread by thread, potions that brewed agony into liquid form, and rituals that summoned entities from the veil between worlds. Wizards who dared open its covers spoke of a chill that seeped into their bones, as if the book itself judged their worthiness. Yet Godelot saw it as his masterpiece, a beacon for those bold enough to embrace the true potency of magic unbound by morality. You can almost hear the scratch of his quill on vellum in those long nights, the air thick with the acrid scent of inks mixed from rare, venomous sources. Godelot wasn't content with theory. He tested every spell in hidden lairs, where echoes of screams mingled with the crackle of dark flames. His obsession grew not just with the arcane, but with power incarnate. The Elder Wand haunted his dreams, its legend pulling at him like an unbreakable summons. He craved its allegiance, believing it the key to transcending the limits he'd so meticulously outlined in his grimoire. Rumours swirled that he acquired it through treachery or barter in the underworld markets of wizarding Europe, though records remain veiled. What is certain is how he guarded it, retreating to the depths of his home, to a cellar whose secrets rivaled the deepest tombs. That cellar became his sanctum, a labyrinth of damp stone vaults lined with shelves, groaning under jars of writhing shadows and artifacts pulsing with malevolent energy. Godelot's obsession with the Elder Wand and the secrets of the cellar consumed him entirely. He experimented there under the flicker of everlasting flames, weaving the wand's unparalleled might into his spells from Magick Moste Evile, walls etched with runes that glowed faintly in the perpetual twilight, floors slick with residues of failed brews that bubbled eternally. He delved into wards so intricate they repelled all but the most determined intruders, convinced that within those confines lay the path to immortality, or dominion over death itself. Visitors, if any braved the descent, reported visions induced by the very air, apparitions of past wand masters clawing at the edges of sight, whispers promising unlimited power to those who listened. Godelot barricaded himself deeper as years blurred, emerging only to procure rarer ingredients, his eyes hollowed by visions only he could see. Father to a son named Hereward, Godelot raised him in the long shadow of that grimoire and those cellar depths, imparting fragments of knowledge laced with warnings. Hereward watched, learned, and hungered. The boy, then man, grew skilled in the dark arts, but chafed under his father's iron secrecy. The Elder Wand's allure proved too strong, its whispers now echoing in Hereward's own mind during stolen glimpses into the cellar. He plotted in silence, mastering spells from the forbidden tome that Godelot kept chained nearby. One storm-lashed night, as thunder masked the incantations, Hereward struck. He lured his father into the cellar under pretense of a breakthrough ritual. then unleashed a curse so swift and silencing that Godelot crumpled without a sound. The ultimate betrayal unfolded in those suffocating depths. Godelot's death at the hands of his own son for magical gain. Hereward didn't merely kill. He sealed the vault, leaving his father to perish amid the very secrets he'd hoarded. The Elder One's loyalty transferring in that moment of fratricide. Days turned to weeks, the air growing fetid with the scholar's fading life, until silence claimed him fully. Hereward emerged victorious, grimoire in one hand, wand in the other, stepping into a legacy built on patricide. Magick Moste Evile endured, copied in hushed circles, its pages fueling generations of dark ambition, while the cellar's secrets mouldered, perhaps still harbouring echoes of that final desperate struggle. Godelot's tale marks a pivot in the chronicle of evil, where knowledge crystallised into a weapon, passed down through blood and betrayal. The wand moved on as it always did, but the grimoire shadow lingered, influencing wizards who sought to build empires on its spells. Yet even as Hereward claimed his prize, darker lairs awaited in the wizarding world, fortresses born from madness that would redefine torment itself. Up next, Chapter 7, Echrisdis and the Birth of Azkaban. What unspeakable evils rose from the sea to haunt the Ministry's nightmares? Centuries after Godelot met his end in that stifling cellar, with his grimoire of forbidden spells echoing through wizarding lore, dark sorcery slithered forward into the 15th century, finding a new devotee in the shadowed isles of the North Sea. Echrisdis, a sorcerer whose name now whispers through wizarding histories like a chill wind off those unforgiving waters, turned his back on the world around him. He vanished into the North Sea to practice unspeakable rites, abandoning the shores of civilized wizard kind for isolation, where no statute of secrecy could bind him. You can almost feel the spray of those brutal waves crashing against jagged rocks, the salt stinging your skin as Echrisdis rowed his frail boat into the endless grey expanse. He sought a place untouched by wands or watchful eyes, a forsaken spit of land battered by storms that howled like damned souls. There, amid the relentless thunder of the sea, he began his work, rites that twisted the very fabric of magic into something profane. Whispers from old tomes suggest he delved into blood rituals, long forgotten even by Herpo standards, carving sigils into his own flesh under moonless skies, invoking entities that no sane wizard would dare name. The air grew thick with the stench of decay and ozone, as his experiments warped the island stones themselves, infusing them with a malice that seeped into every crack and crevice. But isolation bred hunger, a ravenous need for subjects to fuel his depravity. Echrisdis turned his gaze to the Muggol sailors who plied those treacherous routes, hardy men hardened by the sea's fury yet blind to the horrors lurking beneath. With subtle enchantments cast from his crumbling tower, he lured them, false beacons flickering in the fog, siren songs woven into the wind that promised safe harbour amid the gales. One by one, their ships splintered on hidden reefs, crews staggering ashore only to find not refuge, but a fortress of torture and madness rising from the mist like a blackened tooth. Picture those desperate men, soaked to the bone, stumbling into the fortress's maw. Echrisdis had raised Azkaban from the island's heart, its walls hewn from obsidian-like rock that seemed to pulse with inner shadow. Towers spiraled upward, defying the wind's assault, while dungeons burrowed deep into the earth, echoing with screams that blended with the crashing surf. He bound them with chains forged from cursed iron, their pleas ignored as he subjected them to agonies beyond imagining. Cruciatus-like curses before such spells bore names, flaying minds and flesh alike, potions brewed from their own blood that induced visions of endless drowning, rituals that peeled away sanity layer by layer, leaving husks gibbering in the dark. Echrisdis revelled in it, his laughter mingling with their wails, his once human features twisting into something feral, eyes gleaming with the thrill of absolute dominion. Year after year, ship after ship, the fortress swelled with suffering. The very stone absorbed it all, the despair, the agony, the final rattling breaths. until the air itself hung heavy, a palpable shroud that drained warmth from the living. Ecrizdis descended fully into madness, conversing with shadows that murmured back. Convinced his captives were portals to greater power, he no longer slept, sustained by the dark energies he cultivated, his body withering while his malice bloomed unchecked. Then came the end, swift and unceremonious. In his frenzy, Ecrizdis overreached, a ritual collapsing inward like a storm devouring itself. His screams joined the chorus below as life fled him, his essence splintering into the fortress's saturated core. When Ministry wizards, drawn by reports of vanishing fleets, finally breached Azkaban's wards, they found not just bones and ruin, but something far worse. The island throbbed with evil, so profound it birthed the dement. Those gliding abominations, soulless harbingers sliding from the walls like smoke given form. Ecrizdis's death revealed a location so saturated in evil it birthed the Dementors, creatures that fed on the very torment he had sown, turning his prison into their eternal lair. The Ministry sealed it, of course, transforming Azkaban into the wizarding world's bleakest jail. But the shadows Ecrizdis unleashed lingered, guardians of despair that would chill the bones of even the boldest inmate. His legacy endures in every hooded form that patrols those battlements, a testament to how one man's rights can curse a place forever. As we leave the chilling mists of the North Sea behind, the dark lineage twists onward to Chapter 8, the Loxias succession, a tangled web of heirs and wands that will leave you questioning who truly wields power in the shadows. Stay with us. As the fortress of Azkaban swallowed Ecrizdis whole, its stone walls pulsing with the residue of his unending torment, the wizarding world turned its gaze elsewhere. The Elder Wand, that unrelenting beacon of destruction, had slipped from the shadows of the 15th century into a whirlwind of blood-soaked hands, marking what historians call the Barnabas Deveril era, a time of relentless upheaval, where allegiance to the wand meant little more than a swift path to the grave. You can almost feel the chill of those years, can't you? The wand passed like a curse from one grasping wizard to the next, each victor more desperate than the last. Barnabas Deveril himself emerged first, a hulking figure from the rugged coasts of Cornwall, rumoured to have wrested it from a dying rival during a duel that scorched the cliffs black. Deveril didn't hoard its power in secrecy. He wielded it openly, carving through clans of dark wizards who dared challenge him. Villages whispered of nights when green light split the sky and bodies piled like driftwood on the shore, but mastery was fleeting. Within months, a shadowy assassin, some say a betrayed apprentice, struck him down in his own hall. The wand claimed amid the roar of collapsing beams and the stench of charred flesh. That theft ignited the chaos. The Barnabas Deveril era wasn't the reign of one man. It was a savage relay, a dozen pretenders rising and falling in the span of a few brutal years. The wand darted from Deveril's killer to a warlord in the Scottish Highlands, who used it to summon tempests that drowned entire armies of Muggle hunters. He fell to a curse from within his own ranks, poisoned chalice in hand. Then came a sly merchant from the continent, smuggling the wand through black markets, only to be gutted by pirates off the Azores. Each transition painted the map of Europe with fresh graves, the wand's allegiance shifting like sand in a storm. Wizards flocked to it, driven mad by its promise. But the wood seemed to hunger for betrayal, ensuring no one held it long enough to build an empire. From this maelstrom rose Loxias, known to all as Loxias the Horrid, a name that still sends shivers through the archives of the Ministry. He was no mere opportunist. Loxias turned the wand's power into a spectacle of terror, staging public displays of magical execution that drew crowds like moths to a killing flame. Picture the town squares of late 16th century England, packed with wide-eyed muggles and trembling wizards alike, forced to witness his justice. Loxias would perch on a dais draped in black velvet, the Elder Wand gleaming in his fist as he summoned traitors from the dungeons. With a flourish, he'd unleash curses that didn't just kill, they unravelled. One victim, a rival dark mage, burst into flames that danced without consuming, screaming for hours before crumbling to ash. Another, accused of theft, had his bones twist and reform in impossible shapes, a marionette jerked by invisible strings until his heart gave out. These weren't hidden rites in forgotten lairs. Loxias made them theatre. He paraded his executions through festivals, blending them with fireworks and feasts to mock the line between celebration and horror. Muggles, bewitched into complacency, cheered as heads rolled under Avada Kedavra's flash, believing it all a grand illusion. Wizards knew better, fleeing across borders or bending the knee. Loxias revelled in the fear, inscribing his victims' final pleas on plaques that lined his manor walls. He brewed potions from their remains, whispering that the wand demanded tribute. Under his rule, dark magic wasn't whispered. It was broadcast, a warning etched in screams that echoed for miles. Yet even Loxias's grip faltered, plunging the tale into one of wizarding history's great enigmas. Who truly defeated him, Arcus or Livius? The records splinter here, tangled in conflicting accounts from terrified witnesses and forged confessions. Arcus, a towering duelist from the Lake District, claimed the kill in a moonlit showdown atop Loxias's tower. He boasted of disarming the horrid with a blasting curse that shattered the stone beneath them, sending Loxias plummeting into the void, the wand flying into his grasp. Arcus's descendants hoarded that story, etching it into family crests, complete with a depiction of the falling tyrant. But Livius, a cunning scholar from the Black Forest, countered with his own version, one laced with alchemical precision. He insisted it was he who infiltrated Loxias's inner circle, disguised as a loyal executioner, slipping a slow-acting venom into the master's wine during one grand display. As Loxias convulsed mid-curse on his dais, Livius snatched the wand from limp fingers amid the chaos, vanishing before the crowd could react. Livius's journals, discovered centuries later, detail the poison's formula, a brew of nightshade and basilisk venom that mimicked a duel gone wrong. Which tale holds truth? The Ministry vaults preserve dueling scars on Arcus's wand arm, matching Loxias's final curse. Yet Livius's effects include a lock of the horrid's hair, transfigured into a trophy. Some scholars argue both struck at once, Arcus with brute force, Livius with subtlety, each believing themselves sole victor as the wand chose its next path. The ambiguity fueled vendettas that simmered for generations, turning allies into enemies and shrouding Loxias's end in perpetual shadow. The dust from that mystery settled slowly, leaving the Elder Wand to wander once more, its allure undimmed, even as the wizarding world edged toward a reckoning. Whispers of reform stirred in hidden chambers, where leaders plotted to chain the darkness that men like Loxias had unleashed. That reckoning arrives in Chapter 9. 1717, the Ministry strikes back, a pivotal strike against the unforgivable that reshaped everything. What desperate measures did they unleash? And did they truly tame the wand's wild legacy? Stay with me as we uncover it. As the echoes of Loxias, the horrid's public magical executions faded into wizarding memory, a shadow lengthened over Europe. Dark wizards, emboldened by the Elder Wand's bloody trail, through Barnabas Deveril and his ilk, unleashed spells that left no room for mercy or reversal. Villages whispered of neighbours turning on each other under invisible chains, bodies twisted in agony long after the caster fled, and sudden flashes of green light extinguishing lives without a whisper of warning. By the early 18th century, the air in wizarding taverns grew thick with tales of unchecked horror. Wizards who once duelled for honour now wielded magic that stripped away the soul itself. Muggle-born families vanished overnight, pure-blood rivals crumpled in public squares, and even ministry officials found their loyalties rewritten by night. The streets of London, Diagon Alley, and remote Scottish hamlets bore witness to a mounting carnage. Dozens, then hundreds felled not by fair combat, but by curses that mocked the very essence of magic's gift. This rising body count, relentless and unforgiving, finally shattered the fragile veil of tolerance. Wizards demanded order from the shadows where they hid. The International Confederation of Wizards, still young and fractious, turned its gaze to the British Ministry of Magic. Urging action before the Statute of Secrecy crumbled under the weight of so much death. In hidden chambers beneath Whitehall, aurors poured over grimoires stained with blood, piecing together the patterns of devastation. It was 1717 when the hammer fell. The ministry, cornered by the sheer volume of atrocities, issued its most ironclad decree yet. 3 curses, born from the darkest corners of human malice, were formally classified as the unforgivable curses. Spells so profane that their utterance alone branded the caster an enemy of all wizard kind. No trial could absolve them. No plea could soften the sentence. A life in Azkaban awaited, shrouded in Dementor's chill, for any who dared, first among them Imperius. You can almost hear the silken whisper of its incantation, Imperio, slipping into the mind like smoke through a cracked window. It seized control, bending the strongest will to the caster's whim. Victims danced as puppets, committing horrors they would never dream, betraying families, slaughtering innocents, or marching into flames at a foe's command. What made it beyond redemption? The theft of free will itself, the erasure of self that left a hollow shell even after the spell lifted. Healers spoke of eyes that stared vacant for years, souls fractured beyond mending. No counter curse could restore what was stolen. The victim remained forever altered, a ghost in their own skin. Then Cruciatus, the Cruciatus curse, a bolt of pure torment. Crucio, the word alone twisted the tongue. It racked the body with pain beyond endurance. Nerves aflame as if dipped in dragonfire, muscles seizing in endless convulsions. Dark wizards revelled in it during interrogations, breaking prisoners not for information, but for the sheer ecstasy of screams echoing off stone walls. Why deem it irredeemable? The scars it carved were not of flesh alone, but woven into the spirit. Survivors emerged gibbering wrecks. Their laughter turned to madness, sleep haunted by phantom agonies. Finite incantatem might halt the curse, yet the echoes lingered, a lifetime curse in themselves, driving men to suicide or vengeance-fueled rampages. And the gravest of all, Avada Kedavra, a jet of green death, instantaneous and absolute. No block, no dodge, no sacrifice could defy it. Only love's rare shield, unknown in those brutal years. It snuffed life without wound or struggle, leaving the body pristine, the eyes glassy voids. Wizards like Loxias had toyed with lesser killings, but this was annihilation pure. The soul hurled from its vessel without chance of return. Beyond redemption because it mocked resurrection itself. No potion revived the fallen. No ritual called back the departed. It was magic's ultimate betrayal, reducing the miracle of life to a fleeting spark. The ministry's edict rippled outward, etched into every auror's wand and every family's hearth. Patrols thickened in the fog-shrouded nights. Informants whispered from alleyways, and for a fleeting moment the body count slowed. Yet dark magic, like a serpent in the grass, merely coiled tighter, awaiting its next strike. Wizards adapted, hiding their curses behind veils of subtlety, but the line was drawn. Cross it, and the law's dementors awaited. This fragile peace held for centuries, but whispers of great ambition stirred in distant lands. Up next, Chapter 10, The Rise of Gellert Grindelwald, where a silver-tongued visionary turns these forbidden curses into instruments of world-shaking revolution. You won't believe how one man's dream ignites the deadliest war the wizarding world has ever known, despite the ministry's bold stroke in 1717, classifying those 3 unforgivable curses and drawing a line in the sand. Dark magic didn't vanish into the shadows. It simmered, waiting for the right vessel to unleash it on a grander scale. Centuries slipped by. The wizarding world modernized in fits and starts. But by the late 1800s, a new force stirred in the frozen halls of Durmstrang Institute, far to the north where the wind howls like a banshee and the curriculum flirts with the forbidden. Gellert Grindelwald arrived there as a boy of piercing intellect, his silver-blonde hair catching the dim torchlight, eyes like chips of ice that saw through spells and secrets alike. Durmstrang, with its reputation for teaching the edges of dark arts, that Hogwarts would never touch, suited him perfectly at first. He devoured curses, brewed potions that bubbled with malice, and experimented in hidden alcoves where the stone walls seemed to whisper approval. But brilliance like his always pushes boundaries, and Grindelwald soon snapped at them entirely. He twisted spells on fellow students, delving into blood magic that left scars not just on flesh but on souls. Experiments so near fatal, even Durmstrang's lax masters could no longer ignore the screams echoing through the dormitories. Expulsion came swiftly, a humiliating boot from the only home he'd known, casting him adrift at just 16. Whispers followed him, too dangerous, too ambitious, a prodigy unbound. He wandered Europe, owning his wand work in back alleys and forgotten ruins. But fate had a sharper turn in store. That fateful summer of 1899 drew him to Godric's Hollow, a quaint wizarding village in the English West Country, where rolling hills met ancient magic, and the air carried the faint scent of blooming nightshade. There, an aunt, Bathilda Bagshot, the celebrated magical historian, offered him shelter in her cluttered cottage, shelves groaning under tomes of forgotten lore, dust motes dancing in shafts of summer sun. It was in that very village, amid the quiet lanes, where muggles tilled fields, oblivious to the power next door, that Grindelwald met Albus Dumbledore. Albus, just 18, had returned home from his triumph at Hogwarts, in his own mind a whirlwind of ideas too vast for classrooms. The two were like flint and steel. Nights blurred into days as they debated in Bathilda's parlour, parchments unfurled across every surface, ink pots overturned in fervour. Grindelwald spoke of the wizard's supremacy, how muggles, with their wars and machines, dragged the world toward ruin. Albus listened, his blue eyes alight, countering at first, but soon weaving in his own visions of a reordered world. Their alliance deepened into something unbreakable, sealed one moonlit evening with the Blood Pact. In the garden behind the cottage, under a sky thick with stars, they sliced their palms with silver knives, mingling crimson drops in a goblet etched with runes. Vows flowed like incantations. For the greater good, they would conquer death itself, unite the wizarding world, and impose order on the chaos of Mugglekind. Grindelwald preached the Deathly Hallows as the key. The Elder Wand for unmatched power, the Resurrection Stone to command the departed, the Invisibility Cloak to strike unseen. Together, they dreamed of wizarding dominance, a global reign where secrecy ended, and wizards ruled openly, benevolent tyrants guiding humanity from its self-destruction. Plans sprawled across maps, Nurmengard as their fortress, armies of the faithful rising from every corner of the earth. The summer's heat built to a breaking point, though fractured by the one thread neither could sever. Ariana Dumbledore, Albus's younger sister, fragile and hidden away, her magic twisted inward into an obscurial storm, since a traumatic attack in childhood left her unable to control it. Aberforth the brother, caught in the middle, resented the endless visitors disrupting their fragile peace. Tensions ignited into a three-way duel one stormy afternoon, wands flashing, curses cracking like thunder, the air thick with ozone and regret. In the chaos, Ariana fell, her death a tragic accident no one could claim solely. Was it Grindelwald's killing curse, Albus's misaimed hex, the Obscurial's backlash? The truth blurred in the downpour, but the alliance shattered like glass underfoot. Grindelwald fled into the night, the Blood Pact's magic binding Albus from pursuing him. A curse as intimate as their friendship had been. Guilt gnawed at Dumbledore, chaining him to the Ministry's safe paths, while Grindelwald vanished into Europe's underbelly, gathering followers, forging the Elder Wand's legend into his own. The dream of dominance didn't die. It evolved, hardening into a crusade that would engulf continents. What began as philosophical fire in a sleepy hollow soon blazed into the global wizarding war, as Grindelwald's ambitions collided with the world order in ways that make the unforgivable curses seem like parlor tricks. Stick around for Chapter 11, where the skies darken and the true scale of his reign unfolds. You won't want to miss how it nearly tore the wizarding world apart. Before we dive deeper into this incredible journey, I'm curious, where in the world are you watching this from? Drop a comment below and let our global community know. And if you're finding this as mind-blowing as I am, hit that like button to help more people discover this story. That blood pact with Dumbledore burned like an unbreakable chain around Grindelwald's heart, fueling his vision of a wizarding empire rising over the Muggle world. But dreams alone wouldn't conquer nations. Grindelwald needed power beyond spells or followers. He needed the Elder Wand, the Deathly Hallow whispered to make its master invincible. He tracked rumours of the wand's path through Europe's wand makers, whispers that led him to Magick Moste, the famed craftsman whose shop in Germany gleamed with polished holly and dragon heartstring. Gregorovitch had come into possession of the Elder Wand years earlier, prizing it not just for its lethal grace, but for the legends it carried. He boasted in hushed tones to trusted clients, showing off its pale wood, its carvings like veins of ancient magic pulsing beneath the surface. Grindelwald didn't ask politely, disguised under a glamour charm that masked his silver blonde hair, piercing eyes. He slipped into the workshop one fog-shrouded night in the early 1920s. The air hung heavy with the scent of varnish and phoenix feather. Tools scattered like forgotten bones. Gregorovitch, oblivious, hummed a Bavarian tune as he polished a row of ebony wands. Grindelwald struck without mercy, a stunning spell from the shadows, then a swift, imperious curse that bent the wandmaker's will like a reed in a gale. Under that cruel command, Gregorovitch handed over the Elder Wand, his eyes glassy, murmuring its secrets. How it had passed from hand to hand, amplifying curses to fell armies. Grindelwald snapped the mental leash, obliviated the man clean, and vanished into the night, the wand thrumming in his grip like a heartbeat of destiny. From that moment, no duel could touch him unchallenged. The wand chose him, or so he believed, and his conquests ignited. Armed with this relic, Grindelwald unveiled his creed to the wizarding world. For the greater good, it rolled off his tongue like a serpent's promise, twisting noble intent into iron justification. Wizards, he preached, weren't meant to cower in secrecy, hiding from muggles who bred wars and plagues with their blind machines. No, wizards would rule openly, subjugating the non-magical hordes not out of hatred, but benevolence, for their own salvation. His rallies echoed this mantra across Europe, drawing thousands who chafed under the statute of secrecy. Purebloods saw supremacy. Half-bloods like him glimpsed equality in power. Even Muggle-borns wavered, seduced by visions of a structured utopia. To enforce this new order, Grindelwald raised Nurmengard, a fortress prison carved into the Austrian mountains. Its black stone walls veined with enchantments that fed on despair. No Dementors guarded its halls. Grindelwald's design was crueler. The prison's magic amplified inmates' guilt, replaying their darkest deeds in endless loops, breaking minds without a single wand flick. He built it first as a symbol, high spires piercing storm clouds, banners of his sigil, a white deathly hallow against midnight blue, snapping in the wind. Enemies of the vision filled its cells, dissenting Aurors, Muggle sympathizers, anyone who dared whisper against the greater good. Nurmengard wasn't just containment, it was a monument to his philosophy, proving wizards could wield judgment as gods. By 1927, Grindelwald's influence had metastasized into a global wizarding war. Ministries trembled from London to Tokyo, alliances fracturing as his followers, the acolytes, staged uprisings. Muggle newspapers decried unexplained fires and vanishings, blaming anarchists, while wizards whispered of the Dark Lord gathering strength. His masterpiece of terror unfolded that winter in Paris, at a rally beneath the Eiffel Tower's shadow, where he had lured the International Confederation of Wizards under false pretenses of peace talks. Thousands packed the Place du Carrousel, banners of the greater good fluttering like vultures' wings. Grindelwald ascended a dais, wreathed in illusory smoke, his voice amplified by sonorous, weaving manipulation like finest silk. He spoke of Muggle atrocities, the Great War's trenches still fresh graves, and positioned wizards as saviors, not tyrants. Doubt rippled through the crowd. But he turned it with a flick of the Elder Wand. Blue fire erupted, a Protego Diabolica ring that encircled his faithful, harmless to them but devouring all else. Flames roared 20 feet high, sapphire tongues licking the night sky, consuming screams as skeptics burned to ash. The air thickened with the acrid tang of charred stone and flesh, the heat warping the air like a fever dream. Paris teetered on annihilation that night, the Eiffel Tower glowing infernal against the blaze, until Grindelwald quenched it at dawn, leaving a scorched scar on the city, an unbreakable loyalty in his survivors. The war raged on, Grindelwald's forces clashing with Dumbledore's nascent resistance, battlefields from the Black Forest to the Urals soaked in blood and curses. Villages vanished under fiend fire storms. Muggle armies marched into ambushes of confounded troops turning on each other. Yet cracks formed in his empire, whispers of a rival who once shared his vision now standing against him. You felt the weight of that escalating shadow through these chapters, haven't you? But hold on to that tension, because in Chapter 12, The Fall of the First Dark Lord, we unravel how Grindelwald's unassailable reign met its shattering end. Betrayal, one duel that redefined the wizarding world forever. Nurmangard stood as Grindelwald's ultimate testament to his for the greater good crusade, its jagged spires piercing the Austrian skies like accusatory fingers, cells carved deep into the mountain to swallow dissenters whole. Wizards from across Europe vanished into its bowels, their screams echoing off walls enchanted to amplify despair, fueling the fortress's own malevolent hum. Grindelwald ruled from the heights, the Elder Wand an extension of his unyielding fist, his forces sweeping through ministries and Muggle strongholds alike. Yet for all his conquests, one shadow loomed larger than any. Albus Dumbledore, the man who'd once shared his dreams, now watching from afar. Years dragged on, the global wizarding war grinding continents into ash and ruin. Cities like Paris still bore scars from 1927, when Grindelwald's rage had nearly unravelled the French capital in a storm of dark fire. Muggle armies clashed blindly against invisible incursions, blaming conventional foes, while Aurors bled in the underbelly of the world. Dumbledore, headmaster at Hogwarts, poured his genius into safeguarding Britain, weaving protections around schools and sanctuaries, mentoring the next generation against the tide. Whispers spread. Why wouldn't the greatest wizard alive confront his old friend? The blood pact they'd sworn in their youth bound them, a vow unbreakable by wand or word, forged in the heat of Godric's hollow summers. Dumbledore mourned it silently, the weight of lost summers and a sister's grave pressing heavier with every fallen ally. But 1945 shattered the stalemate. As Allied forces closed on Berlin, Grindelwald pushed his assault to its zenith, seeking to seize the chaos for his new world order. Reports flooded in of mass subjugations, Muggle leaders enthralled under Imperius, wizarding families torn apart. Dumbledore could no longer stand idle. The pact had weakened, perhaps frayed by time or Grindelwald's own transgressions, but it was Ariana's memory, the innocent casualty of their youthful hubris, that ignited the fire. On a storm-lashed night in late summer, he stepped out of the shadows for the duel of the century, the 1945 confrontation that redefined wizarding history. They met atop a jagged peak near Nurmangard, the air thick with ozone and unspoken regrets. Grindelwald wielded the Elder Wand with ferocious grace, unleashing tempests of green flame that scorched the earth black, fissures splitting rock, as if the mountain itself recoiled. Dumbledore countered, with precision born of decades, his Phoenix Core wand weaving shields of liquid light, transfigurations that turned stone to serpents mid-air. Spells clashed in symphonies of destruction, fiery whips lashing like vipers, gales howling with the fury of betrayed ideals. Witnesses later spoke of the heavens splitting, auroras of raw magic painting the night, the ground trembling as if giants stirred below. Hours blurred into eternity, each wizard pushing the boundaries of dueling art, until Dumbledore disarmed him at last, the Elder Wand yielding to its true master once more, defeated but unbroken in gaze. Grindelwald was dragged into the heart of his own creation, Nurmengard, the prison he'd built to entomb his foes. Iron doors sealed behind him with a finality that echoed through the halls, his cell high in the tower, overlooking the empire he'd lost. There he languished for 50 years, a solitary king in chains, his visions crumbling to dust while the world healed. No visitors, no mercy, only the slow drip of water on stone, the distant cries of those he'd condemned now joined by his own silence. In the void left by Grindelwald's fall, a power vacuum ripened across Europe, dark ambitions festering unchecked, ministries rebuilt shakily, Auror forces depleted, the Elder Wand's trail going cold in Dumbledore's hands. Whispers of new shadows stirred in orphanages and forgotten alleys, where a boy with no name yet nursed grudges deeper than any before. That emptiness called to hungrier souls, paving the way for a more dangerous successor, one whose reign would eclipse even the first Dark Lord's terrors. Next time in Chapter 13, Tom Riddle, the Orphan of Wools, we unravel the chilling origins of the boy who became Voldemort, abandoned in a grim London workhouse, his first sparks of magic igniting a path to unparalleled horror. What drove an orphaned nobody to challenge death itself? You won't want to miss it. With Grindelwald locked away in the fortress he built himself, defeated and silenced. For what would become 50 long years, the wizarding world exhaled a fragile sigh of relief. But shadows never truly dissipate, they merely shift. Across the English Channel, in the grimy underbelly of London, a new darkness took root on the last day of 1926, when a baby boy named Tom Marvolo Riddle drew his first breath in the cold wards of Wool's orphanage. Picture the scene if you can, though we'll linger here slowly. A miserable December eve, snow flurrying against soot-streaked windows, the air thick with the smell of boiled cabbage and unwashed linens. Merope Gaunt, the child's mother, had staggered into that place hours earlier, her body racked by labour pains, her eyes hollowed by a lifetime of torment. She was the last direct descendant of Salazar Slytherin himself, heir to a bloodline twisted by generations of inbreeding and rage. Her father, Marvelot Gaunt, a hulking brute with a face like weathered bark, had ruled their squalid shack in Little Hangleton with an iron wand, beating Merope daily for her supposed weakness, her frailty that dared not match the family's vaunted pure-blood pride. Her brother Morfin, wild-eyed and feral, joined in the abuse, hexing her for sport until she cowered like a whipped dog. Desperation drove Merope to the village one fateful day. There she spotted Tom Riddle Sr., a handsome muggle from the grand Riddle house atop the hill, striding with the easy arrogance of wealth. No spells of violence for her. Instead, something subtler, more insidious, a love potion brewed from her depleted magical stores, slipped into his drink. He fell for her utterly, wedding her in secret, carrying her back to that shack amid the Gaunt's sneering disapproval. But the potion's haze lifted eventually, as all such enchantments do. Tom Sr. recoiled in horror from the wretched woman he'd been bound to, abandoning her without a backward glance, fleeing back to his proper life. Pregnant and broken, Merope wandered the roads until wolves took her in. As the midwife placed the squalling infant in her arms, she whispered his name, Tom for his father, Marvolo for her own, and then slipped away forever, dying within hours, perhaps from weakness, perhaps from a heart shattered beyond repair. The orphanage staff, hardened to such tragedies, bundled the boy away, noting only his unnerving quietude, his dark eyes that seemed to pierce right through you. Tom grew amid the clamour of unwanted children, a solitary figure even then, his sharp features marking him apart from the others. Wool's orphanage squatted on a bleak street, its halls echoing with the shouts of boys scrapping over crusts of bread, the perpetual damp seeping into bones like a curse. Yet Tom commanded a strange respect, or was it fear? He hoarded treasures pilfered from his dorm mates. A yo-yo here, a broken watch there, stashing them in a battered old box under his bed, retrieving them only to savour their gleam in secret. But darker impulses stirred early, whispers of a sociopathy that chilled the matron Mrs. Cole to her core. There was Billy Stubbs, a burly lad with a pet rabbit he doted on foolishly. One morning, they found the creature dangling from the rafters in the boys' bathroom, hanged by its neck with a length of cord, its body limp and eyes glassy. Billy swore Tom had done it, creeping in the night with that blank, unblinking stare, muttering about how the rabbit had deserved it for nibbling his shoes. No proof, of course. But the other boys kept their distance after that, whispering of Tom's unnatural cruelties. Then came the cave incident, a tale that still sends shivers through those who've heard it. 2 children, Amy Benson and Dennis Bishop, both a year older than 10-year-old Tom, vanished with him on a holiday outing to a seaside trip organised by the orphanage. They returned days later, white-faced and trembling, refusing to speak of what happened in that jagged seaside hollow, a place Tom had found, black-mouthed and forbidding, lashed by relentless waves that crashed like thunder. He had lured them inside, deeper into the suffocating dark, where the air grew fetid and the rock walls closed in, performing some unspoken magic that left them catatonic with terror. Dennis nearly died from the shock, babbling incoherently for weeks about things in the water, and Tom's voice echoing like judgment itself. Mrs. Cole pressed them, but they only whimpered, "Make it stop," their eyes darting to Tom as if he still held them captive. By summer of 1938, when Tom was 11, these incidents had woven a tapestry of dread around him. Enter Albus Dumbledore, summoned by a peculiar instinct after overhearing orphanage gossip through wizarding channels. Tall and shabby in his plum suit and gloves, ever cautious of the pox that had scarred his hands, he climbed the stone stairs to Mrs. Cole's office, where gin fumes hung heavy. She poured him a measure, spilling tales of the Riddle boy, unnaturally clever, friendless, prone to odd accidents befalling those who crossed him. Dumbledore listened, then asked to see the child. Tom sat alone in a sparse room, legs dangling from the chair, his posture rigid as a wand. Those piercing eyes locked onto the professor's, calculating, devoid of warmth. "I knew I was different," he said flatly, admitting to the thefts, the harms inflicted on animals and peers, even hinting at powers he could wield without a wand, making things move, making pain bloom in others. He knew he was a wizard before Dumbledore spoke the word, demanding proof, his voice laced with entitlement. "I can make bad things happen to people who annoy me. I can make them hurt if I want to." Dumbledore saw it all. The cold manipulation, the lack of remorse, the thrill in destruction. And yet he extended the invitation to Hogwarts. Warnings littered the conversation. The stolen items returned. No more hurting others, magic only at school, but deeper signs. The void where empathy should lie, the predatory gleam. Dumbledore noted them, weighed them, and chose to proceed, believing the castle's structure might temper what the orphanage could not. A fateful gamble, those ignored flickers of true malevolence. Tom packed his few belongings that night, stepping into a world that would amplify his shadows, not contain them. Little did Dumbledore know, the Orphan of Wolves carried Slytherin's blood like a venomous inheritance, poised to poison everything it touched. And as we leave Tom Riddle stepping toward his destiny, steel yourself for what's next in Chapter 14. The Heir of Slytherin awakes, where the chamber stirs, and a serpent's hiss echoes through stone halls, revealing horrors that will redefine pure blood terror. By 1938, when Tom Riddle turned 11, the owl from Hogwarts arrived at the orphanage door, carrying a letter that would unlock the doors to a world he had always sensed was his by right. No longer confined to the grey drudgery of wolves, he boarded the Hogwarts Express, his sharp eyes scanning the compartments filled with wide-eyed first years, already calculating alliances and weaknesses among the children of wizards, sorted into Slytherin under the watchful gaze of the sorting hat, which whispered temptations of greatness into his ear, but bent to his unyielding will. Riddle wasted no time. He glided through the castle's shadowed corridors, like a shadow itself, his prefect's badge gleaming by 3rd year, his head boy status a mere formality by 7th. Professors adored him. Slughorn praised his potion brewing genius, claiming Tom's Felix Felicis brew shimmered like liquid gold. Dippet, the headmaster, marvelled at his flawless essays on the most arcane branches of magic. Classmates gravitated to him, drawn by his effortless charm. His stories of Muggle London spun into thrilling tales that masked his utter disdain. Yet behind those perfect smiles and impeccable robes hid a darker purpose, one that festered in stolen moments, poring over dusty tomes in the restricted section, tracing the serpentine lineage of Salazar Slytherin, backed his own gaunt bloodline. Riddle's true education unfolded not in classrooms, but in the castle's underbelly. He uncovered whispers of the Chamber of Secrets, that ancient vault sealed by Slytherin himself. To safeguard pure-blood purity from the mudblood taint, late nights found him slipping past Peeves the poltergeist, his wand tracing forgotten runes on damp flagstones, until one fateful evening in his 5th year, he hissed the Parseltongue command that only the hair could utter. Stone ground against stone deep below, and the entrance yawned open, a colossal stone face mouthing a tunnel into blackness, the air thick with the musk of ancient scales and malice. The basilisk stirred from its millennial slumber. That monstrous serpent hatched from a chicken's egg beneath a toad, just as Herpo the Foul had pioneered millennia before. Riddle commanded it effortlessly, his voice a sibilant caress through the gloom. For weeks it prowled unseen, its yellow eyes petrifying the unworthy. Students whispered of a monster in the pipes, their footsteps echoing quicker through torchlit halls, slick with condensation. Hagrid, that gentle half-giant with a heart too big for Slytherin's cunning, kept his massive spider Aragog in a forgotten chamber, tending it like a pet amid the castle's secrets. Then came the opening of the chamber in earnest. Myrtle Warren, a plain, pimply Ravenclaw, with a penchant for wailing in bathrooms, crossed the basilisk's path one rainy afternoon in 1943. She huddled in her stall, moaning about acne charms gone wrong, when the great yellow eyes gleamed through the plumbing. A single gaze, and she crumpled lifeless to the tiles, her body rigid as stone, steam rising from the chilled porcelain. Panic gripped Hogwarts. Classes halted. The castle quaked under Dumbledore's piercing scrutiny, though the Transfiguration Professor suspected more than he voiced. Riddle moved like smoke. He closed the chamber with a Parseltongue seal, ensuring the beast slumbered once more, then turned his gaze to the perfect scapegoat. Rubeus Hagrid, expelled in his 3rd year for the monster Aragog, whom Riddle had sniffed out through subtle inquiries, was framed with ruthless precision. Anonymous tips led professors to the spider's lair. Hagrid's tear-streaked protests drowned by the school's terror. Myrtle's petrified form was all the evidence needed. The half-giant's wand snapped, his dreams of auror glory shattered, while Riddle stood solemnly at the memorial, eyes dry as desert sand. But murder's thrill lingered in Riddle's veins, a euphoric rush that demanded permanence. In the chamber's fetid depths, amid coils of serpentine shed skin crunching underfoot, he performed the unspeakable. Avada Kedavra had ended Myrtle, but to cheat death itself, he delved deeper into forbidden rites gleaned from and scraps of Herpo's legacy. Soul-splitting agony tore through him as he poured a fragment into a plain black diary, once owned by a little Hangleton girl, now transfigured into his first Horcrux. The book drank deep, its pages absorbing screams only Riddle could hear, binding his essence eternally. Graduation came in 1945, Riddle's own. W, L, S and N, E, W, T. Unmatched in Slytherin history, he declined ministry offers, vanishing into the Muggle world under aliases, his handsome face twisted by subtle dark rituals that would soon render him inhuman. Those lost years beckon next. Chapter 15. The Lost Years, 1945 to 1955, where Riddle sheds Tom entirely, chasing power's abyss across continents. What horrors did he unearth in those shadows? And how did they forge the monster we dread? Stay with me to find out. As Tom Riddle stepped out of Hogwarts for the final time in 1945, offers poured in from every corner of the Ministry of Magic. Prestigious positions awaited him. Roles in the Department of Magical Law Enforcement, the International Magical Office of Law, even whispers of a fast track to the minister's inner circle. They saw in him the brilliant Slytherin prefect, top of his class, a young wizard who could shape the future of wizardkind. But Riddle turned them all down flat. No explanations, no regrets. Instead, he vanished into the shadowy aisles of Borgin and Burke's, that dingy nocturne alley curio shop where cursed objects whispered secrets to those who dared listen. Picture the place if you can. The air thick with dust and the faint acrid tang of old potions gone sour. Dim lanterns flickered over shelves crammed with shrunken heads, venomous fangs and heirloom amulets that hummed with malevolent intent. Borgin himself, a wiry man with eyes like polished obsidian, hired Riddle on the spot, not as a clerk, but as a salesman, a charmer who could coax galleons from the most suspicious purebloods. Riddle thrived there, you see. He moved through the shop like a shadow, his voice smooth as serpent skin, unravelling the histories of poisoned chalices and blood-quenched blades. Customers left lighter in their pockets and heavier in their souls, drawn by his quiet intensity, his unnerving ability to know exactly what forbidden thing they craved. Why Borgin and Burke's? It wasn't drudgery, it was a deliberate descent. The ministry offered power in the light, laws, ledgers, politics. But Riddle hungered for the underbelly, where dark artifacts pulsed with forgotten magics. He handled objects that had tasted blood, locket after locket, that might have belonged to Salazar Slytherin himself. Day after day, he catalogued relics tied to the darkest lineages, absorbing their auras like a sponge. Whispers from old tomes in the back room spoke of Horcruxes, of souls splintered for eternity. His co-workers noticed the change, the way his eyes gleamed when fingering a cursed ring, or how he'd linger alone after closing, murmuring incantations that made the shadows twist. It was there, amid the gloom, that Riddle's true education began. Borgin and Burke's wasn't just a job, it was a gateway. He cultivated contacts in the wizarding underworld, dealers in illegal wand cores, breeders of acromantulas, smugglers of basilisk venom, pure-blood fanatics slunk in after hours, trading tales of ancient Slytherin glories. Riddle listened, filed away names, weaknesses. He charmed his way into their confidences, all while plotting his ascent. No one suspected the orphan boy was already weaving a web far grander than their petty intrigues. By 1946, Riddle's ambition sharpened to a lethal edge. Enter Hepzibah Smith, a plump, proud descendant of Helga Hufflepuff, whose family vault brimmed with treasures. She was no fool, but vain, obsessed with her lineage, eager to flaunt it before handsome young men like Riddle. As a regular at Borgin and Burke's, she summoned him to her opulent home in Crook Lane, all lace doilies and gleaming heirlooms. "Come see my cup, Tommy," she'd coo, her voice dripping honey over possessiveness. That golden chalice, etched with badgers and set with sapphires, hummed with Hufflepuff's ancient magic, loyalty bound in metal, warmth that could heal or ensnare. Riddle played the part flawlessly, charming smiles, flattery that made her blush beneath her rouge. Visit after visit, he sipped her Darjeeling tea, eyes roving the velvet-lined cabinets. Then she unveiled Slytherin's locket, Slytherin's own, heavy as regret, its serpentine-esque glinting like a promise of power. Priceless, Hepzibah boasted, dangling it before him. Worth more than that old shop of yours. Riddle's fingers itched. He could feel the locket's dark pulse, echoing his own veins. It called to him, heir of Slytherin that he was, whispering of immortality, of dominion. The manipulation unfolded like a slow poison. Riddle mirrored her pride, spun tales of his own pure heritage to stoke her ego. Gifts of rare amortentia-laced confections, subtle legilimency probes to map her routines. She grew careless, lonely widow that she was, dreaming of a match with the striking salesman. On his final visit, tea steaming in fine china, Hepzibah reached for her cup once more, but Riddle had tampered with it. Nightshade essence, undetectable, swift. Her eyes bulged, teacup shattering as she clawed at her throat. Riddle watched impassively, pocketing the cup and locket with gloved hands. A flick of his wand, incendio to the curtains, accio to summon house elves away, and the blaze swallowed her screams. The ministry called it an accident, a tragic fire. Riddle returned to Nocturne Alley, treasures concealed, his soul a fraction darker. Those artifacts burned in his thoughts, the cup's gentle glow masking its hunger, the locket's cold weight promising eternity. But Hepzibah's death marked no end. It was ignition. Riddle resigned from Borgin and Berks abruptly, vanishing without trace. For the next decade, from 1946 to 1955, he plunged into the darkest corners of the world, Albania's mist-shrouded mountains, where ancient curses clung to crumbling ruins, the shadowed bazaars of Nurmengard, Grindelwald's forsaken prison echoing with residual screams. He sought out the very worst of wizardkind, renegade curse-breakers, necromancers brewing inferi in hidden lairs, warlocks who tamed werewolves with forbidden runes. You can almost feel the chill of those journeys, the bite of foreign winds, carrying whispers of lost spells, the metallic tang of blood rituals under starless skies. Riddle bartered Hepzibah's stolen relics for knowledge that scorched the mind, rituals to fracture the soul, potions to defy death, incantations that bent time itself. In Peruvian jungles, he wrestled secrets from dark creature handlers. In Egyptian tombs, he deciphered glyphs of soul binding, his body twisted under the strain, skin paling to parchment, eyes reddening like embers, but power surged within. He honed the unforgivable curses to perfection, animated his first inferi from forgotten battlefields, commanded shadows that obeyed no light. These lost years forged him utterly. No letters home, no ministry sightings, just rumours filtering back to London. A pale figure glimpsed in a Tibetan monastery of black monks, a voice bargaining in a Romanian dragon slayer's den. By 1955, Riddle emerged changed, his once handsome features warped by unchecked magic. The boy from Wool's orphanage was gone. In his place, a spectre ready to claim his destiny. What horrors did those wanderings unleash? And how did they birth the monster we know? That's the dark heart of our next chapter, chapter 16. The transformation into Voldemort. Stay with me. You won't want to miss how the lost boy became the Dark Lord. With Hepzibah Smith's lifeless body cooling behind the velvet curtains of her opulent drawing room, and Hufflepuff's golden cup and Slytherin's silver locket now tucked securely into his pockets, Tom Riddle slipped away into the shadows like smoke from a dying fire. He resigned from Borgin and Berks the very next day, his charm intact as he left no trace of suspicion behind. But this was no ordinary departure. For the next 10 years, Riddle vanished from the wizarding world entirely, embarking on a journey that would forge him into something unrecognizable. A being of pure malice, stripped of every last shred of humanity. Those lost years were a descent into the abyss of the darkest magic imaginable. Riddle sought out the most depraved sorcerers in hidden corners of the world, from the cursed alleys of Nocturne to forgotten tombs in distant lands. He delved into forbidden rituals that no sane wizard would touch, owning his power through acts that twisted not just his soul, but his very flesh. You can almost feel the chill of those ancient libraries, where he pored over tomes bound in human skin, the air thick with the acrid scent of potions bubbling over eternal flames. Each step deeper into the abyss changed him, layer by layer, as he experimented with the ultimate taboo, splitting his soul to cheat death. By the time he emerged, the physical toll of soul splitting had ravaged him beyond repair. The loss of humanity was etched into every fibre of his being. No longer did he possess the handsome aristocratic features that once turned heads at Hogwarts. His skin stretched taut and pale over sharpened bones, his eyes burned red like embers in a void, and his nose flattened into serpentine slits, giving him the flat, snake-like face that would strike terror into generations. His voice, once smooth and persuasive, now hissed unnaturally, a forked tongue flickering behind lipless teeth. This was no mere cosmetic shift. It was the price of immortality, a a body warped by the fragments of soul he'd shattered and hidden away. Voldemort had been born, not in a blaze of glory, but in the quiet horror of self-mutilation, his human shell discarded like a shed skin. In 1957, this newly transformed figure dared to return to the place of his twisted origins. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. He strode through the castle gates under the guise of Lord Voldemort, though few yet knew that name. Headmaster Armando Dipet, frail and nearing retirement, received him in the circular office overlooking the grounds. But it was Albus Dumbledore who truly saw through the facade. Riddle, no Voldemort, had come seeking the post of defence against the dark arts professor, his silver tongue weaving tales of his travels and newfound expertise. He claimed to have studied abroad, mastered arts that would benefit the students. But his eyes gleamed with a hunger that betrayed him. Dipet wavered, charmed by the old student's poise, yet Dumbledore's quiet refusal sealed the fate. "We have no need of your services," Dumbledore said firmly, sensing the darkness radiating from the man before him like heat from a forge. Outraged at the rejection, Voldemort placed a curse on the very position he'd craved, ensuring that no defense against the dark arts teacher would last longer than a single year. From that moment, the role became a poisoned chalice at Hogwarts, a legacy of spite that haunted the school for decades. You might wonder what drove such pettiness in a wizard of his power. But it was the first crack in his facade of invincibility, a reminder that even Voldemort could be denied. With his old life forever severed, Voldemort began gathering followers from the shadows of wizarding society. In dimly lit pubs and secret gatherings, he recruited those disillusioned by Muggle encroachment, pure-blood fanatics hungry for dominance, and ambitious souls drawn to his raw power. They called themselves the Knights of Walpurgis at first, a nod to the ancient Walpurgis Night, when dark forces were said to revel under the full moon. These were the Proto-Death Eaters, bound not yet by the Dark Mark, but by oaths whispered in blood and promises of a new world order. Figures like the Lestrange brothers, Rosier and Nott, pledged their wands early, mesmerized by Voldemort's serpentine visage and the aura of immortality that clung to him like mist. They met in abandoned manors, plotting the overthrow of the Ministry, their laughter echoing as they toasted to pure blood supremacy. These knights formed the nucleus of something far deadlier, a cadre that would soon swell into an army. Voldemort's transformation was complete. No longer the orphaned boy stealing trinkets from his betters, but a dark lord with lieutenants at his command, ready to unleash war upon the wizarding world. And that's where we'll pick up next in Chapter 17. The First Wizarding War, where Voldemort's shadow first engulfs Britain, and the body count begins to rise in ways you won't believe. By 1970, Voldemort had spent over a decade in the shadows, honing his power and gathering followers, emerging not as Tom Riddle, but as a force that would plunge the wizarding world into its darkest hour, the First Wizarding War. His rejection at Hogwarts had only fueled him, turning that serpentine rage into a calculated storm that no one saw coming until Ministry offices lay in ruins and families huddled in fear. Voldemort's opening salvo wasn't a blaze of curses across Diagon Alley. It was subtler, more insidious, a strategy of terror designed to rot the heart of wizarding Britain from within. He wielded the Imperious Curse like a surgeon's blade, slipping into the minds of key Ministry officials, or as even the Minister for Magic himself at times. Imagine a high-ranking department head, eyes glazing over in a quiet corridor of the Ministry atrium, his will dissolving under that silvery fog. Suddenly, confidential files vanished, raids were called off at the last second, and pure-blood extremists walked free while innocents were rounded up on fabricated charges. Voldemort didn't storm the gates. He turned the guards against their own. One cursed official would approve a Death Eater's permit for a research flu network that funneled dark artifacts straight to hidden lairs. Another would leak owl post routes, letting assassins strike witnesses before they could testify. The Ministry, once a beacon of order, became a house of mirrors. Every decision suspect, every memo a potential trap. Wizards stopped trusting their own leaders, whispering in pubs about puppets, pulling strings from the shadows. This wasn't brute force. It was psychological warfare, eroding faith until the government teetered on collapse, paralyzed by doubt and betrayal. As the imperious web tightened, Voldemort cast his net wider, recruiting from the fringes of wizardkind. Those society had long shunned or feared, he sought the giants first, towering brutes from the mountains of northern Europe, their thunderous footsteps shaking the earth like avalanches. Hagrid would later recount how Voldemort charmed them with promises of conquest, of smashing Muggle cities underfoot and claiming vast territories denied them by wizard treaties. A handful pledged loyalty, enough to hurl boulders through castle walls or crush Auror squads in their fists, becoming his shock troops in midnight raids. Then came the werewolves, led by the savage Fenrir Greyback, whose yellowed fangs dripped with the blood of children he'd bitten just to swell their ranks. Voldemort offered them freedom from ministry hunts, full moons without wolfsbane chains, and a world where they ruled as apex predators. Greyback's pack prowled the outskirts, turning battlefields into slaughterhouses under the moon's glow, their howls echoing the Dark Lord's name. But it was the very worst of wizardkind that formed his inner circle. The Death Eaters proper, sadists from Nocturne Alley, curse breakers who twisted their talents to forbidden arts, half-breeds nursing grudges against the pure-blood elite, and ambitious purebloods like the Malfoys, Lestranges, and Blacks lured by visions of supremacy. They gathered in candlelit manors, robes swirling like smoke, toasting Voldemort's immortality while plotting the downfall of Muggle-borns. He immersed himself among them during those lost years, learning their darkest secrets, binding them with oaths unbreakable by mere wandwork. To bind this unholy alliance, Voldemort unveiled his masterpiece of dread, the Dark Mark, burned into the left forearm of every true follower. It wasn't just a tattoo, it was a summons, a brand, a perpetual reminder of servitude. With a flick of his wand, he'd summon them, the skull and serpent igniting in green flames against the night sky, visible for miles as a harbinger of doom. Death Eaters would apparate en masse at that signal, swarming villages or wizarding enclaves, leaving scorched earth and silenced screams. But the true genius lay in the paranoia it bred. That skull hovering over your home, was it a raid or a warning? Friends turned on friends, accusing each other of bearing the mark under sleeves. Husbands checked wives' arms in the dead of night. Neighbours reported owl deliveries as suspicious. The Daily Prophet printed daily lists of the vanished, their faces staring out like ghosts, while whispers spread of imperious victims mouthed Death Eater slogans without a trace of resistance. No one knew who was marked, controlled, or simply cowed into silence. Auras patrolled in pairs, wands drawn on colleagues. Families bolted doors against kin who might betray them. The air thickened with suspicion, every shadow a potential serpentine face, every knock an execution squad. Voldemort didn't need to conquer. He made the world conquer itself through fear. Order of the Phoenix members, like Dumbledore's old comrades, fought back in secret cells, striking from fog-shrouded alleys. But the tide of terror seemed unstoppable. Villages burned, blood status checks became routine at Gringotts counters, and children learned to duck Cruciatus sparks before their first spells. Yet amid this chaos, in a dingy pub on a quiet night, a prophecy stirred that would single out one family and unravel everything. Details we'll uncover next in Chapter 18. The Prophecy and the Potters. As Voldemort's grip tightened through Imperius-controlled puppets, and armies of giants lumbering from distant mountains, werewolves prowling under full moons, the wizarding world teetered on collapse. Families huddled in hidden homes, the Ministry a hollow shell, issuing desperate decrees that dissolved into whispers. Yet in this shadow of unrelenting dread, one fragile thread of foresight would unravel everything. A prophecy whispered in a dingy pub that twisted the Dark Lord's path toward his own undoing. Picture the Hog's Head Inn, tucked away in Hogsmeade's grimy underbelly, its air thick with the sour tang of stale butterbeer and unwashed robes. Dust motes danced in the weak light, filtering through grimy windows, and the barman, Aberforth Dumbledore, eyed his brother Albus with that familiar mix of suspicion and resignation. It was late 1979, and Albus had come to interview a prospective divination professor, Sybil Trelawney, whose lineage traced back to the great seer Cassandra Trelawney herself. Sybil arrived draped in shimmering shawls, her enormous glasses magnifying eyes that darted like trapped birds, beads clinking softly as she settled into a creaky chair. Her voice, when she spoke, carried the misty cadence of someone half lost in vapours, dismissing tea leaves and crystal balls with theatrical flair. Albus listened patiently, his half-moon spectacles glinting. But then something shifted. Sybil's hands trembled, her gaze unfocused, and her body went rigid as an inner voice seized her. In a voice not entirely her own, deep and resonant, she intoned the words that would echo through history. The one with the power to vanquish the Dark Lord approaches, born to those who have thrice defied him, born as the 7th month dies, and the Dark Lord will mark him as his equal. But he will have power the Dark Lord knows not, and either must die at the hand of the other, for neither can live while the other survives. The words hung in the air like smoke from a cursed cauldron, chilling even Albus, who swiftly silenced the room and escorted the dazed Sybil away before more could be overheard. Unbeknownst to them, Severus Snape lingered in the shadows of the bar, his sallow face pressed close to a thin door. He'd come applying for the defence against the dark arts post, but curiosity, or desperation, drew him to eavesdrop on the interview next door. He caught the prophecy's crux, enough to grasp its peril. A child born at the end of July to parents who'd defied Voldemort 3 times. Snape, entangled in the Death Eater's web, yet harbouring secret loyalties to Lily Evans, his lost love from childhood, rushed straight to Voldemort with what he'd heard. That fateful eavesdropping sealed choices none could foresee. Voldemort, ensconced in his foreboding manner, poured over the fragment like a serpent uncoiling around prey. 2 boys fit the prophecy's shadow. Neville Longbottom, pure-blood son of Aurors Frank and Alice, who defied him thrice in battle, and Harry Potter, the half-blood child of James Potter and Lily Evans, also 3-time resistors. The Dark Lord sneered at the pure-blood option. Neville's lineage too noble, too aligned with his enemy's ideals. No, Harry, marked by Muggle blood like Voldemort himself, that boy would be the one. A mirror to his own fractured soul, a half-blood pretender to challenge him. With cold precision, he decreed the Potter's end, dispatching his most trusted to shatter their Fidelius-protected home in Godric's Hollow. The Fidelius charm, woven by Peter Pettigrew as secret keeper, held firm until betrayal cracked it wide. On the crisp night of Halloween 1981, as jack-o'-lanterns flickered in Muggle windows and the scent of pumpkin spice mingled with wood smoke, Voldemort apparated to the Potter cottage. James Potter met him first at the door, wand raised in futile defiance, his cry of Lily, "Take Harry," and go echoing through the halls before the green flash of Avada Kedavra silenced him forever. Lily, barricaded in the nursery, pleaded for son's life, her love a barrier no curse could fully pierce. Voldemort, impatient, hissed the killing curse once more, Avada Kedavra, but something shattered. Harry's cry pierced the night as the curse rebounded, a freak magic born of sacrifice and ancient power, striking Voldemort instead. His body unravelled in a cataclysm of dark energy, flesh dissolving into shadow, soul fragments screeching into the ether. The Dark Lord fell that Halloween, his reign crumbling like ash in the wind. The cottage stood scarred, Harry marked with a lightning bolt scar, the only living soul amid the ruins. Auras swarmed. Dumbledore arrived with Hagrid on his flying motorcycle, whisking the boy to safety. Whispers spread. The boy who lived had vanquished, he who must not be named. In the aftermath, the wizarding world exhaled. Celebrations erupted in Diagon Alley. Ministry survivors wept openly, And even Snape, racked by guilt over Lily's death, sought Dumbledore's aid in atonement. Voldemort's followers scattered, some imprisoned in Azkaban, others fleeing into obscurity. The prophecy, that enigmatic utterance from Sybil Trelawney, had ignited the spark, but its full fire lingered, waiting. For though the Dark Lord seemed vanquished, shadows stirred in unexpected places. And that brings us to the eerie silence that followed. Those hidden years when whispers of return grew faint, only for a certain professor's folly to reignite the flame. Stick around for Chapter 19, The Shadow Years and Quirrell's Folly, where you'll uncover how Voldemort clawed back from oblivion in ways that still chill the bones. But Voldemort's curse rebounded that fateful Halloween night in 1981, shattering his body into oblivion and leaving his fragmented soul adrift. No longer a man, nor even a proper spirit, he became less than a ghost, a wretched wisp of malice clinging to existence in the dense, fog-shrouded forests of Albania. Picture those ancient woods, you know the kind. Twisted oaks dripping with perpetual mist, roots snaking through soil soaked by endless drizzle, where sunlight barely pierces the canopy, and the air hangs heavy with the rot of forgotten centuries. There, amid the howls of unseen wolves and the rustle of leaves that whispered secrets to no one, Voldemort endured. Not whole, not powerful, but a parasitic shade, barely corporeal, feeding on rats and snakes just to sustain a flicker of awareness. Hunger gnawed at him eternally, not for food, but for a vessel for flesh to anchor his rage. Days blurred into years, 10 long ones, as he evaded the hunters who sometimes stumbled upon his trail. Wizards drawn by rumours of a dark presence, only to vanish into the undergrowth, their screams swallowed by the trees. He survived like that, you see, a predator reduced to prey, his once grand serpentine face now a vaporous echo, eyes like dying coals scanning the gloom for salvation. Albania's forests had always been a haven for dark creatures, vampires lurking in caves, rogue trolls crashing through thickets, but even they shunned this abomination. Voldemort's soul, splintered by so many Horcruxes, couldn't fully die, yet it couldn't reform. He drifted from hollow to hollow, possessing fleetingly the bodies of beasts, only to be expelled when their weak hearts gave out under the strain of his malice. The pain was exquisite, a constant searing that mirrored the Giggling Curse's green flash, reminding him of every arrogance that led here. Yet in that desolation, his mind sharpened, plotting revenge against the boy who survived, against Dumbledore who foresaw it all. Whispers reached him on the wind, tales of a child marked as equal, hidden away. But power? That demanded a body, a plan, a fool willing to serve. Enter Quinus Quirrell, the unlikeliest of pawns, a Ravenclaw alumnus, turbaned and trembling. Quirrell had ventured abroad after Hogwarts, seeking glory in the wider wizarding world. He travelled to Albania, drawn by dark curiosities, perhaps chasing unicorns or ancient runes, innocent pretensions masking a growing thirst for forbidden knowledge. In those same haunted forests, he found what no sane wizard sought: Voldemort's shade, hovering like black smoke over a desiccated animal corpse. Quirrell didn't flee. No, ambition twisted inside him, and he offered himself. The possession was no gentle merger. Voldemort burrowed into Quirrell's flesh, wrapping around his skull like a living noose, the back of his head throbbing with the Dark Lord's face, hidden beneath that infamous turban. Imagine the horror. Quirrell's mild features masking screams only he could hear, his nerves aflame as Voldemort drank his life force drop by drop. Quirrell stuttered more than ever, his body weakening, skin paling to translucence, but he gained power, crude, borrowed, laced with imperious-like control from within. With Quirrell as his puppet, Voldemort orchestrated the infiltration of Hogwarts itself, Professor of Defense against the Dark Arts for the 1991 term. The cursed position no one held longer than a year. Quirrell glided through the castle's halls, his foul breath reeking of decay, garlic a feeble mask for the rot within. Stone walls echoed with students' laughter, oblivious to the monster in their midst. He prowled the corridors by night, muttering curses under his breath, eyes darting to the mirror of Erist that would soon betray him. Dumbledore suspected, of course. The headmaster's gaze lingered too long, but proof eluded him. Voldemort savoured the irony. Back at Hogwarts, the school he'd once haunted as Riddle, now subverting it from the inside, Snape watched warily, sensing something off in his colleague's twitchy demeanour, while first years like Harry Potter arrived, unknowing bearers of destiny. Quirrell's mission burned clear: steal the Philosopher's Stone, that crimson elixir of immortality hidden in the depths, crafted by Nicola Flamel to grant eternal life. With it, Voldemort could rebuild his body, slake his thirst for flesh. The plot unfolded layer by layer, a gauntlet of protections Voldemort despised yet admired. Fluffy the three-headed dog guarded the trapdoor, its slobbering maws drooling under Quirrell's futile lullabies, until the Trolls Club smashed through Quirrell's own dark summons. Deeper still, the devil's snare writhed in the chambers below. Tendrils coiling like lovers' embraces turned deadly, ensnaring the unwary in suffocating green. Quirrell navigated the winged keys, their iridescent flutter mocking his clumsiness, and the monstrous chessboard, where pieces shattered like thunderclaps, stone knights crumbling to dust. Potions' riddles gleamed with icy logic, flames parting only for the bold. At the heart the stone waited, but the mirror of Erist twisted the game. Voldemort, peering through Quirrell's eyes, demanded it aloud. "What do you see?" Quirrell's hands trembled as he touched Harry's shoulder, skin blistering at the boy's innocent purity. Love's ancient magic repelling the dark. In that underground chamber, amid the flickering torchlight and the acrid stench of transfigured flames, it all unravelled. Hara, small and defiant, clutched the stone as Quirrell unwound his turban, revealing the monstrous face. Lipless mouth stretched in a hiss, red slits for eyes glaring with millennia of hate. "Fear me," Voldemort rasped, Quirrell's body convulsing as the Dark Lord strained for control, but Harry's touch burned like fiend fire. Lily's sacrifice echoing through blood. Quirrell crumbled to ash, the stone slipped away, and Voldemort fled once more, ejected into the ether, a vapour trail fleeing the castle's wards. Defeat stung deeper than Albania's chill. The stone destroyed, Flamel's immortality ended by choice. Back to the shadows he slunk, weaker still, haunting fringes of wizarding Europe, whispering to rats in alleys, possessing snakes in ditches. 10 more years loomed, a void of impotence, until a truer servant stirred. But that servant's tale, the one that finally dragged Voldemort from oblivion. It's coming up next, in Chapter 20, The Servant and the Resurrection. You won't want to miss how loyalty twisted into the ultimate betrayal. I hope you're as amazed by this as I am. If you want to stay updated on more content like this, make sure to subscribe and join our community of curious minds. Trust me, what's coming next will challenge everything you thought you knew. Quirrell's charred husk lay broken on the cold stone floor of Hogwarts, his life snuffed out by the rebounding curse, leaving Voldemort adrift once more. A vaporous wraith slithering through Albania's shadowed woods, too weak even to possess the lowliest creature. Yet in the squalid warmth of the Weasley burrow, a traitor stirred, his tiny rat heart pounding with secrets that would drag the Dark Lord back from oblivion. Peter Pettigrew, the snivelling Gryffindor who betrayed his friends for a scrap of power, had evaded death for 12 long years. Framed by Sirius Black, presumed blown to bits in that fateful alley, he'd slunk into the shadows as Scabbers, Ron Weasley's mangy pet. Day after day, he gnawed on crusts and dodged Crookshank's claws, his human cunning buried beneath fur and whiskers, listening to the world's whispers of his master's fall. The burrow's chaos suited him. The chatter of children, the scent of Molly's stews, the illusion of safety. But Sirius's escape from Azkaban shattered that fragile peace, Dementors howling across the wizarding wireless, tales of the supposed mass murderer closing in. As the school year at Hogwarts unravelled, tensions peaked aboard the Hogwarts Express, where Dementors chilled the air and Sirius's spectral form haunted dreams. Ron clutched Scabbers tighter, the rat's beady eyes flickering with panic. By the time they reached the Shrieking Shack, The truth clawed its way free. Pettigrew's animagus form exposed under the flickering torchlight, his pleas shrill and desperate. "I was a fool," he whimpered, grovelling before Harry, Ron, Hermione, Sirius and the werewolf Remus Lupin. The group bound him, dragging him toward justice, the wind whipping through Godric's Hollow as they prepared to hand him to the Dementors. But in that moonlit yard, Pettigrew's cowardice triumphed again. With a sob and a convulsive wriggle, he shrank back into his rat shape, scampering through the grass like a streak of filth. Ron lunged, fingers closing on empty air. The Weasley's boy watched helplessly as his pet vanished into the night. Dodging spells that scorched the earth, Peter Pettigrew fled into the wilds, a fugitive once more, his loyalty to Voldemort rekindled by terror. He knew whispers in Nocturne. Ali spoke of a weakened dark presence haunting Albania's mountains, rumours of a shadow that could reward service beyond imagining. Half-starved and ragged, Pettigrew crossed Europe, evading auras and werewolves alike, drawn by those dark murmurs. In Albania's mist-shrouded forests, where ancient pines clawed at perpetual twilight, he found him, a pathetic shrunken form, barely mist, wailing for a body to inhabit. Voldemort's rage boiled as Pettigrew knelt, but necessity bred alliance. Wormtail, the spirit hissed through cracked lips. "You have returned to me." The Rat-Man pledged everything, his magic, his flesh, his soul. Together, they plotted in that fetid lair. Pettigrew brewing crude potions from scavenged herbs, feeding his master rats and serpents to sustain the flickering life. Voldemort's mind sharpened, visions of glory piercing the pain, but he needed more: information, power, a vessel. Enter Bertha Yorkins, a plump ministry witch whose nosiness had always outpaced her caution. In the summer of 1994, she vacationed in Albania, oblivious to the shadows closing in. Pettigrew struck under a full moon, his imperious curse weaving through her mind like silk threads, compelling her southward to a crumbling hovel. Bertha's eyes glazed, her plump cheeks slack as she trudged through thorns and fog, memories of portkeys and tournament plans bubbling unwittingly from her lips. Voldemort, hovering in his weakened state, descended upon her with the Cruciatus curse, the red light flaring as her screams echoed off the rocks. Hours turned to agony. Bertha's mind fractured under the relentless torture, but Voldemort pried loose her secrets. The Triwizard Tournament's revival, dates etched in Ministry stone, Crouch Jr.'s improbable escape from Azkaban years prior, hidden by his father's spells. Even Moody's vulnerabilities slipped free, fodder for infiltration. Satisfied, Voldemort ended her with a flash of green, her body crumpling lifeless, her essence fueling his schemes. Pettigrew watched, trembling, as Bertha Jorkins's murder unlocked the Ministry's vaults, handing Voldemort the threads to puppet the wizarding world anew. With intelligence secured, Voldemort commanded Pettigrew to Little Hangleton, the derelict village where his Muggle father lay buried under a mouldering headstone. The graveyard crouched under stormy skies, nettles choking the graves, the air thick with the rot of forgotten Riddle kin. Pettigrew, sweating in the chill, unearthed the bone of the father. Tom Riddle Sr.'s brittle remains, dug from the earth with trembling hands, dust sifting through fingers like sand. Voldemort chanted in Parseltongue, the ground quaking as the shard ignited in a cauldron bubbling with potions that reeked of bone ash and venom. Next came the flesh of the servant. Pettigrew's face drained white as Voldemort's command sliced the air. "Give it willingly, Wormtail." The knife bit deep into his own arm, severing the silver hand in a spray of blood, the stump cauterized by dark magic. He howled, collapsing into the mud, but dropped the quivering flesh into the brew, the liquid hissing and turning milky. Voldemort's laughter rasped like dry leaves, the cauldron frothing higher, shadows lengthening across the crooked stones. One ingredient remained, blood of the enemy, taken unwillingly. Through Bertha's secrets and a daring impersonation, Barty Crouch Jr., freed at last, polyjuiced as Alastor Moody, they lured Harry Potter to the graveyard's edge. The Triwizard Cup, twisted into a portkey, yanked him there amid the champion's maze. Harry tumbled onto the graves. Voldemort's loyalists rising from the earth, wands drawn. Pettigrew seized the boy, pinning him as Crouch. Moody's face bound him tight. The knife pierced Harry's arm, crimson blood dripping into the roiling potion. The enemy's life force sealing the ritual. The cauldron erupted in blinding light. Voldemort rising reborn, skinless at first, then paling to marble, eyes red slits gleaming with malice. He flexed clawed hands, naked and triumphant, the serpentine face you know so well. Pettigrew received his silver prosthetic, a mocking gift that later strangled him on Voldemort's whim. The Dark Lord tested his power, dueling Harry amid lightning cracks and green blasts. The graveyard a charnel house of reanimated corpses and shattered stone. Harry escaped by providence, but Voldemort lived. Immortal hunger renewed, his army stirring in the wings. That resurrection in Little Hangleton marked the turning point. The servant's devotion, birthing an era of dread. Pettigrew's flight from the Weasleys had ignited it all, a rat's survival unravelling the fragile peace. As Voldemort slithered back into the shadows, plotting deeper incursions. You'll want to hear how the Second War truly ignited in Chapter 21. The Second War, infiltration and fear. What hidden agents wormed into Hogwarts itself, spreading terror from within. With Bertha Jorkins's memories now fully extracted, her usefulness to Voldemort ended in a final, merciless flash of green light. Her body disposed of in the depths of the Little Hangleton graveyard. Those stolen secrets, detailed layouts of the Ministry, schedules of key officials, even the inner workings of the Department of Mysteries, gave the Dark Lord the perfect blueprint for his next move. No longer a wraith scraping by on rats and shadows, Voldemort was reborn, his serpentine form pulsing with raw power, and he wasted no time turning those secrets into weapons. Pettigrew, ever the snivelling servant, brewed the necessary polyjuice potion, using hairs plucked from unsuspecting Ministry workers, allowing Death Eaters to slip into the heart of wizarding government like venom through veins. You can almost feel the chill of that infiltration. The way corridors, once bustling with paper-shuffling clerks, now hid masked figures, whispering imperious commands, bending auras and undersecretaries to their will. Voldemort's old followers, scattered and silent since his fall 14 years prior, began to stir at his summons, drawn back by the dark mark burning on their arms. A searing call that no true loyalist could ignore. The return of the Death Eaters sent ripples of fear through the wizarding world. But the Ministry of Magic, under Cornelius Fudge, clamped down with frantic denial. Fudge, his face perpetually flushed with disbelief, insisted to anyone who would listen that Harry Potter was a troubled boy spinning tales for attention, that no mass breakout loomed. No Dark Lord had risen. Papers like the Daily Prophet echoed his line, branding Dumbledore a fearmonger and Harry a liar, while bridges in London inexplicably burst into flames and masked assailants struck in the night. The air grew thick with unease, families drawing wards tighter around their homes, yet the official word remained, all is well, sleep soundly. That fragile illusion shattered on January the 10th, 1996, when Dementors swarmed Azkaban in unprecedented numbers, their rattling breaths freezing the sea air as they overwhelmed the guards. In the ensuing chaos, a mass breakout freed over 24 of the most dangerous prisoners. Voldemort's inner circle, hardened fanatics who'd never recanted. Bellatrix Lestrange emerged first, her wild black hair framing a face twisted with manic glee, her eyes alight with the madness of Azkaban's endless nights. She'd endured 14 years in those soul-sucking cells, for her role in the Longbottom's torture, her laughter echoing through the stone as she cruciated the auras into submission. Beside her strode Antonin Dolohov, the duelist whose poison-laced spells had felled wizards like Fabian Pruitt. Rodolphus and Rabastan Lestrange, her brother-in-law and his kin, their loyalty unbroken, and others like Augustus Rookwood, the unspeakable whose Department of Mysteries knowledge now fed straight back to the Dark Lord. These weren't mere thugs, they were the elite, the ones who'd stood at Voldemort's right hand during the First War, their return signalling not just numbers, but a resurgence of coordinated terror. Azkaban's alarms wailed into the fog-shrouded night as they apparated away, leaving behind a fortress stripped of its worst inmates, the wizarding world waking to headlines that even Fudge couldn't spin. Fear coiled tighter with each attack. Mysterious disappearances, muggle baiting in remote villages, the occasional dark mark staining the sky green. Voldemort himself stayed hidden, his base a shadowed manor warded against detection, but his influence spread like fiend fire. The Order of the Phoenix reformed in secret. Dumbledore rallying the faithful at Grimmauld Place, where dust motes danced in the dim light of whispered plans. Harry, back at Hogwarts under the watchful eyes of the new defense professor, Dolores Umbridge, a squat, toad-like ministry plant, faced inquisitions as disguised detentions, her quill carving words into his hand as punishment for speaking truth. Umbridge's regime choked the school, banning clubs, silencing talk of Voldemort. Her saccharine decrees enforced by blood quills and educational decrees that piled up like shackles. Whispers of the Department of Mysteries grew insistent. A veiled archway humming with otherworldly whispers, prophecies glowing on shelves like captured stars. Harry's scar burned nightly, visions pulling him into Voldemort's rage, a serpentine mockery of a ministry official, taunts about a failed infiltration. The Dark Lord, sensing the boy's connection, dangled bait, a false vision of Sirius Black, tortured in that forbidden department. June 26th brought the storm. Harry, driven by desperation, led his Dumbledore's army friends, Ron, Hermione, Ginny, Neville, Luna, through the flue to the Ministry atrium. They descended into the circular chamber of the Department of Mysteries, time swirling in hourglasses, brains in tanks pulsing with thought, the veil's chill draft tugging at their robes. Death Eaters ambushed them, Lucius Malfoy sneering as he shattered prophecies, demanding the one foretelling his master's downfall. Bellatrix cackled through the fray, a Cruciatus hitting Neville like a thunderbolt, dredging his parents' screams from his memory. Spells lit the halls in bursts of red and green, stunners, impedimenta, sectum sempra slicing flesh. The Order arrived in a blaze of reinforcements. Sirius dueling like the reckless godfather he was, Lupin and Tonks weaving protective charms. Moody's eye whirring through the gloom, but the tide turned when Voldemort's elite pressed in, the air thick with the ozone tang of dark magic. Sirius fell through the veil, his laughter cut short by Bellatrix's jet of red light, vanishing into that fluttering silence. Dumbledore himself apparated in, a whirlwind of phoenix fire and Elder Wand mastery, clashing with Voldemort in a duel that shook the prophecies from their shelves. Ministry reinforcements finally flooded in, Fudge, wide-eyed at the sight of the Dark Lord in serpentine glory, his denial crumbling as the prophecy orb shattered, revealing words of a chosen one born as the 7th month dies. Voldemort's public reveal was undeniable now, the wizarding world thrust into war's cold grip. Fudge's face drained of colour as the Dark Lord disapparated, leaving behind a battlefield of broken glass and broken bodies. The Second War had ignited, infiltration giving way to open fear, every shadow hiding a potential Death Eater. Next time, in Chapter 22, The Fall of the Greatest Wizard, you'll witness the shattering moment that handed Voldemort the Ministry on a silver platter. What desperate act broke the wizarding world's strongest shield? Stay with us to find out, as the Death Eaters flooded back into the shadows from Azkaban, led by the venomous Bellatrix Lestrange and her inner circle of fanatics. Voldemort's grip tightened like a noose around the wizarding world. The Ministry clung desperately to denial, dismissing every sighting, every whisper of terror as mere hysteria. But Albus Dumbledore knew better. He saw the storm gathering, and in the flickering candlelight of his office high in Hogwarts' tallest tower, he pieced together the unthinkable truth about his old enemy's immortality. Dumbledore had long suspected Voldemort's obsession with eternal life went beyond mere spells or elixirs. It traced back to those shadowy years when Tom Riddle first delved into forbidden knowledge, far from the stone corridors of Hogwarts. The headmaster's investigations led him deep into the underbelly of dark magic history, unearthing fragments of lore from ancient grimoires and cursed artifacts. He recalled the locket he'd retrieved from a seaside cave, its golden surface etched with serpentine S's, pulsing with a malevolence that chilled even his ancient bones. That locket, once belonging to Salazar Slytherin himself, bore the unmistakable scar of a Horcrux, a vessel into which Riddle had poured a fragment of his soul through an act of unspeakable murder. But one Horcrux wouldn't suffice for a wizard like Voldemort. Dumbledore's mind raced through the clues. The diary destroyed by Harry Potter 2 years earlier, another splinter of soul, the gaunt family ring, blackened and cracked, hidden in a ruined shack, its stone whispering promises of resurrection. Each object screamed the same horror. Voldemort, in his arrogance, had modelled himself after the Dark Lord's playbook, but exceeded it. Where Herpo the Foul created the first Horcrux centuries ago, Voldemort split his soul not once, not twice, but deliberately 7 times. Himself as the 7th piece, guarded by 6 indestructible anchors scattered across the world. 7, the most magically powerful number, ensuring his essence endured even if his body crumbled to dust. Dumbledore confided this realization to Harry alone, the weight of it hanging in the air like the cave's stagnant brine. As they stared at the false locket left behind by an unknown thief, the hunt had only just begun, and with each Horcrux they chased, the shadow of the Dark Lord's return grew longer. Yet even as Dumbledore orchestrated this desperate quest from the heart of Hogwarts, betrayal brewed within its walls. Draco Malfoy, pale and trembling under the weight of his father's imprisonment, received a summons from Voldemort himself. The boy was tasked with the impossible: murder Albus Dumbledore. Failure meant death for his entire family. Desperate, Draco turned to the one man who could help: Severus Snape, his potions master. Bound by an unbreakable vow forged in the dim glow of the burrow, Snape swore to complete the deed if Draco faltered, his black eyes unreadable, his voice steady as iron. The night of the tragedy unfolded under a sky ripped by lightning. Death Eaters breached Hogwarts' defences. Slipping through invisible corridors conjured by Draco's hand, they converged on the Astronomy Tower, the highest point in the castle, where the wind howled like mourning spirits. Dumbledore, weakened by the cursed ring's poison snaking through his veins, faced Draco alone atop the turret. The boy hesitated, one shaking, tears carving tracks down his ashen face. Snape arrived just as the moment teetered on the brink. Why did it have to be Snape who delivered the fatal curse? Dumbledore knew the truth. His own death was no accident, but a meticulously planned sacrifice. Draco, too young, too fractured, could never bear the stain of killing the greatest wizard alive. It would shatter him, hand Voldemort a broken tool. Snape, hardened by double lives and buried loyalties, was the only one trusted with the burden. More crucially, Dumbledore revealed later in whispers to Harry, Snape's act was essential to mislead Voldemort about the Elder Wand's allegiance. By killing the Wand's master, Snape became its new owner in the eyes of destiny, a deception that would unravel the Dark Lord's final gambit. With a flash of green light that echoed across the grounds, Snape uttered the words Avada Kedavra, and Albus Dumbledore plummeted from the tower, his body crumpling on the ancient stones below like a fallen star. The greatest wizard of his age was gone, struck down by the man he'd saved, all to protect the fragile spark of hope. Hogwarts descended into chaos that night, flames licking the sky as Death Eaters rampaged through the corridors. But Voldemort's triumph extended far beyond the castle walls. His agents had infiltrated the Ministry's highest ranks months earlier, puppets dancing on invisible strings. On the heels of Dumbledore's death, the final blow landed. Pius Thickness, senior undersecretary and a man of quiet ambition, fell under the imperious curse, his will enslaved. Voldemort's voice slivered through the wizarding wireless, cold and triumphant. Pius, Thickness has been moved to the post of head of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement. Cornelius Fudge has resigned. The ministry has fallen. The wizarding world awoke to a new dawn of darkness. Newspapers screaming headlines of upheaval. Families barricading doors against the encroaching night. With Dumbledore slain and the ministry in chains, Voldemort's path to absolute dominion lay open, his Death Eaters swelling the streets like a plague. But the true horror of his reign was only beginning to unfold. Join me next for Chapter 23, The Reign of Terror, where you'll witness the nightmare that gripped Britain in ways no one could have imagined. With Albus Dumbledore slain on the Astronomy Tower, Voldemort's shadow engulfed the Ministry of Magic entirely. Thick fog rolled through the atrium that very night, Dementors gliding silently past flickering torches as pious Thickness, under the Imperious Curse, declared the Ministry's full allegiance to the Dark Lord. Wizards and witches huddled in doorways, their breaths visible in the chill, whispering of disappearances and raids that had already begun. This was no mere takeover. It marked the dawn of the Reign of Terror, a suffocating regime where fear became the air they breathed. Dolores Umbridge, that squat toad-like figure, with her girlish giggle masking venom, slithered back into power as senior undersecretary. She spearheaded the Muggle-born Registration Commission, a grotesque tribunal set up in a ministry courtroom stripped bare, its walls echoing with sobs. Muggle-borns were dragged in chains before a panel of sneering purebloods, forced to confess how they'd supposedly stolen their magic from proper wizards. Umbridge's quill scratched endlessly, pink ink blotting parchments that branded them thieves. Their wands snapped like dry twigs under her pudgy fingers. Trials devolved into inquisitions, victims recounting childhood memories of accidental magic, only to be accused of fraud. Some vanished into Azkaban's depths, their cells filling with the stench of despair, while others faced far worse in hidden chambers where screams were muffled by silencing spells. This commission wasn't an aberration. Institutionalized dark magic across the wizarding world, weaving Voldemort's ideology into the fabric of daily life. Hogwarts bowed first, its curriculum twisted under the Carrow's rule. Alecto and Amicus, siblings with faces like battered cauldrons, enforcing blood purity with Cruciatus lessons in the dungeons. Students learned to cast unforgivable curses on first years, the air thick with the coppery tang of blood from bitten lips. Ministry offices hummed with dark artifact production, cauldrons bubbling potions to detect mudblood traces in blood. Propaganda posters plastered Diagon Alley, Slytherin serpents coiling around slogans promising purity, while snatchers patrolled the countryside, their ragged cloaks fluttering like vultures' wings, dragging in anyone with a hint of Muggle heritage. Dark magic wasn't hidden anymore. It was mandated, a curriculum for the nation, turning neighbours into informants and friends into foes. Voldemort, ever the strategist, layered his control with subtlety. He cast the taboo hex on his own name, a brilliant, insidious enchantment that turned You Now Who into a forbidden word and Voldemort into a beacon. Spoken aloud, it shattered protective charms like glass under a hammer, revealing the speaker's location in an instant. Order members learned this the hard way, whispering his name in safe houses only to hear the crack of apparition. Death Eaters materializing from the dark. The hex fed directly to Voldemort's mind, a web of whispers pinpointing resistance. Families stopped saying it altogether, substituting fearful silences or childish nicknames. But the spell hunted the bold. Ron Weasley, horse from days in hiding, let it slip once, and suddenly their tense Fidelius-like protections frayed. Fiendfire scorching the horizon as pursuers closed in. It was genius. Voldemort's name, once a curse, now his greatest surveillance tool, silencing dissent before it could ignite. Amid this terror, Voldemort's obsession with immortality sharpened to a razor's edge. He'd pieced together whispers of the Elder Wand, the Death Stick, from Draco Malfoy's broken confessions and Ollivander's terrified mutterings in the Malfoy Manor cellar. The Wand's allegiance wasn't his yet, It demanded a master's death. He began his search for the Elder Wand with Gregorovitch, the famed wandmaker whose shop in Germany gleamed with polished ebony and dragon heartstring cores. Voldemort apparated into the night, shattering the frost-laced windows, his red eyes glowing as he demanded the wand's whereabouts. Gregorovitch, elderly and trembling, babbled of a theft years before by a blonde boy with a scarred face, none other than young Gellert Grindelwald. Voldemort's rage erupted. A flash of green light struck the old man down, his body crumpling amid scattered wand components, the air reeking of ozone and finality. The trail led to Nurmengard, Grindelwald's forsaken fortress prison, its towers clawing at storm clouds like skeletal fingers. Voldemort strode through corridors slick with damp rot, torches sputtering shadows that danced like Inferi. Grindelwald, once a visionary tyrant, now a broken shell with wild white hair and eyes hollowed by decades of isolation, faced his successor without flinching. He confessed the wand's path. The Dumbledore won in their legendary duel, but refused to beg. Voldemort's killing curse lit the cell in emerald fire, Grindelwald's body slumping against the stone, his final act a spark of defiance that mocked the Dark Lord's quest. Yet the wand evaded him still, its secrets buried deeper, fueling a paranoia that gripped even his inner circle as the noose tightened around Britain. Hogsmeade patrolled by werewolves under Fenrir Greyback's foaming maw, bridges collapsing under troll hammers, and the sky over London choked with dementors blotting the sun. Voldemort's regime cracked only in whispers of rebellion, but those whispers would soon amplify through the devoted shadows at his side. Coming up in Chapter 24, The Inner Circle, Profiles in Evil, we'll delve into the twisted lives of Bellatrix Lucius and the rest, uncovering the personal demons that fueled their fanaticism. What drove them to such depths, and who among them harboured the darkest secrets of all? As Voldemort's name became a curse that snared anyone bold enough to utter it, his inner circle closed ranks around the Ministry's new order, enforcing terror with a personal savagery that turned ideology into intimate agony. These were no mere followers. They were the architects of dread, each carving their mark on the wizarding world through unyielding fanaticism or craven ambition. Bellatrix Lestrange embodied the purest flame of that fanaticism, a witch whose devotion to the Dark Lord twisted her into the supreme specialist of the Cruciatus curse. Born into the ancient Black family, she wed Rodolphus Lestrange in a union forged more from shared zeal than affection, and together they plunged into Voldemort's service during his first rise. Her laughter echoed through the Department of Mysteries as she duelled Order members, her wand slashing Cruciatus after Cruciatus, forcing screams from even the sturdiest foes. Azkaban claimed her for 14 years after she and her cohorts tortured the Longbottoms into insanity. Yet the Dementors could not extinguish her fire. When the mass breakout shattered those fortress walls in 1996, she emerged wilder, her dark curls matted, her eyes burning with a joy only pain could ignite. You can almost hear her cackle amid the cold stone corridors, feel the invisible knives of her curse twisting through muscle and nerve, prolonging suffering not for information, but for the sheer ecstasy of loyalty proven. She duelled her own cousin Sirius Black to the Veil's edge, her spell work a frenzy of green light and crimson agony, and later, in Malfoy Manor, she carved the Dark Mark's echo into Hermione Granger's arm with deliberate relish. Bellatrix didn't just serve Voldemort, she worshipped him, viewing his pure blood supremacy as divine writ, her every hex a prayer. No other Death Eater matched her precision with Cruciatus, turning it from a tool of interrogation into an art form that broke minds before bodies. Her fanaticism blinded her to doubt, making her the Dark Lord's most trusted lieutenant, even as she mocked Lucius for his faltering nerve. Lucius Malfoy, by contrast, revealed the cowardice lurking beneath the aristocratic elite's polished veneer, a man whose silver tongue and vast wealth masked a spine of brittle porcelain. Head of one of Wizarding Britain's oldest pure bloodlines, he poured galleons into Voldemort's early campaigns, slipping poisoned artifacts into homes and swaying ministry officials with bribes wrapped in silk. His cane concealed a wand that unleashed curses at masked gatherings, yet when the Dark Lord fell in 1981, Lucius jettisoned his master's robes faster than a fiendfire blaze, claiming imperious control to slither free. He strutted through Hogwarts boards, sneering at Muggleborns, but his nerve cracked under pressure. Picture him in the Department of Mysteries, his fine robes torn, screaming orders at his son Draco, while Death Eaters faltered around him. His diary Horcrux lost to Harry Potter years before, a secret failure that gnawed at his prestige. Freed from Azkaban by his master's return, Lucius grovelled at Voldemort's feet, his influence shattered. Reduced to a house arrest at Malfoy Manor, where he watched Bellatrix command his home, his cowardice peaked in the Battle of Hogwarts, fleeing the fray, while his wife faked Draco's loyalty to survive. Lucius embodied the elite's hollow core, all pomp and ancient lineage, crumbling when true darkness demanded blood, while Bellatrix exalted pain and Lucius schemed from shadows. Antonin Dolohov and Fenrir Greyback served as the brutal enforcers of Voldemort's new regime, their raw violence grinding opposition into dust. Dolohov, a grizzled veteran with a duelist's precision, bore the scars of past defeats, his chest marked by the invisible slash of Hermione's spell in the Ministry, and channeled that rage into spells that felled Remus Lupin in the skies over Hogwarts. He had tortured Fabian and Gideon Pruitt, decades earlier, brothers of Molly Weasley, overwhelming them with dark magic that no mercy tempered. Under the taboo's web, Dolohov prowled London streets, his wand a scythe through anyone whispering resistance, his brutality a blunt instrument that made him indispensable for street-level purges. Greyback complemented him with feral savagery, a werewolf whose loyalty bought him freedom to indulge his bloodlust unchecked. No full moon required for his horrors. He savaged children on Voldemort's whim, his yellowed fangs ripping into flesh during raids that left villages howling. He cornered Bill Weasley on the burrow's doorstep, claws rending before the full moon's curse fully claimed him, turning scars into lifelong reminders of the regime's reach. Greyback haunted Lavender Brown's final moments in the castle corridors, his breath a rancid fog, enforcing pure-blood doctrine with teeth and talons. Together, Dolohov and Greyback were the regime's fists, smashing through defences where subtlety failed, their presence alone enough to silence crowds at executions. These profiles etched the Inner Circle's terror into the era's bones. Bellatrix's ecstatic torture, Lucius's snivelling retreat, Dolohov's lethal duels, Greyback's beastly maulings. They fortified Voldemort's grip as the Muggle-born Commission swelled with victims, and taboo traces lit up hidden safe houses, but whispers of a final stand gathered strength. Up next, the Battle of Hogwarts unleashes it all. What desperate gambits and hidden allegiances will clash in those hallowed halls, deciding the fate of wizardkind forever, with Bellatrix Lestrange's unbridled fanaticism and Lucius Malfoy's trembling allegiance hanging like shadows over the Death Eater ranks. Voldemort turned his gaze fully to Hogwarts Castle, where the last flickers of resistance burned against the night. On the 2nd of May, 1998, as dawn's grey light clawed at the horizon, the Dark Lord halted his advance, his army of giants, werewolves, acromantulus, and cloaked followers poised on the shattered grounds. Smoke curled from the rubble of fallen towers, the air thick with the copper tang of blood and the acrid bite of spellfire. Voldemort's voice, high and cold as a serpent's hiss, amplified by magic, sliced through the chaos, carrying his ultimatum to every defender huddled within the ancient walls. He demanded Harry Potter. Surrender the boy, he proclaimed, and all within would be spared. No harm to students, no further slaughter of teachers or order members. 1 hour, that was all he granted. The castle fell silent, save for the distant groans of the wounded and the crackle of dying fires. You can almost feel the weight of that pause. The defenders exchanging glances in the great hall, faces smeared with soot and streaked with grief. McGonagall's lips thinned, Neville's fists clenched, but no one moved to betray their own. Voldemort waited, his pale eyes gleaming with predatory patience. Nagini coiled at his feet like a living trophy. When the hour ebbed without Harry emerging, his laughter echoed, a sound like shattering ice, and he unleashed hell. Fiend fire roared from his wand, basilisks slithered from the forbidden forest's edge, and the castle trembled as the final stand erupted in a storm of green light and screams. Amid this maelstrom, one death cut deeper than most, a thread in Voldemort's unravelling tapestry of power. Severus Snape, the double agent whose loyalties twisted like roots poisoned soil, found himself summoned to the Shrieking Shack. Voldemort had long coveted the Elder Wand, that ancient relic of death itself, wrested from Dumbledore's grasp when Snape struck him down on the Astronomy Tower. The Dark Lord believed mastery transferred through murder, a fatal miscalculation born of his arrogance. Snape never truly wielded the wand's allegiance. It had passed to young Draco Malfoy in that moment of wandless disarming atop the tower, then quietly to Harry Potter months later. But Voldemort saw only the kill, the direct line from Dumbledore's corpse to Snape's hand. You hear the creak of the shack's warped floorboards as Voldemort enters. His followers, Greyback the Carrows, at his heels. Snape stands tall, his black robes tattered, eyes flickering with unspoken secrets. The Elder Wand cannot serve you unless you defeat its master, Snape says, voice steady even as dread coils in his gut. Voldemort nods, almost regretful, then unleashes Nagini. The great serpent strikes with venomous precision, fangs sinking into Snape's neck again and again. Blood wells dark and hot, spilling onto the dusty floorboards as Snape slumps, gasping. His final act, a silvery thread of memories extracted by Harry's Patronus, spilling tales of love, regret, and the Half-Blood Prince's hidden heart. Voldemort departs, leaving Snape to die alone, whispering Lily's name into the gathering dark. That misstep with the wand would doom him. In the moment, it was just another body in the war's grim ledger. While the castle burned and alliances shattered, Harry's path had converged on a truth more shattering still. Days earlier, in the shadowed depths of the Forest of Dean, the hunt for Horcruxes reached its desperate zenith. Huddled under invisibility cloaks, amid ancient oaks dripping with mist, Harry, Ron and Hermione had faced the locket's insidious whispers, Voldemort's soul fragment mocking their fears, amplifying every fracture. Ron, redeemed by his return, plunged the sword of Gryffindor into its heart, the Horcrux shrieking as it shattered, releasing a plume of black smoke that reeked of decay and forgotten screams. But that was merely prelude. Harry's sacrifice loomed larger, a willing walk into oblivion to destroy the penultimate piece of Voldemort's fractured soul. He knew now from whispers and visions that he himself bore it, the boy who lived marked as the final Horcrux. In the Forest of Dean's oppressive gloom, with rain pattering on sodden leaves and the distant hoot of owls underscoring his isolation, Harry chose death. No pleas, no spells of defense. He stepped forward to face Voldemort, unarmed, heart pounding like a war drum. The killing curse struck true, green light engulfing him, body crumpling lifeless amid the ferns. Yet in that void, destruction stirred. The soul shard within him splintered and died, unnoticed by the Dark Lord who claimed victory. Resurrection Stone's echoes faded, but Harry's gamble severed Voldemort's immortality at its core. The penultimate Horcrux reduced to ethereal ash. Back at Hogwarts, echoes of that sacrifice rippled through the battle. Defenders rallied, sensing a shift in the air, as if the castle's stones themselves drew breath. Voldemort, flush with triumph over what he thought was Harry's corpse, broadcast his glee, parading the fallen boy before his forces. But doubts gnawed. Why no fear in the enemy's eyes? Why did the Elder Wand falter in his grip? Snape's spilled memories, viewed by Harry in the headmaster's office, had unlocked it all. The wand's true allegiance, the Horcrux secret, Lily's protective love. Emerging reborn, Harry confronted his destiny, the Dark Wizard's empire cracking under the weight of his own hubris. Thank you to everyone who's been drifting off with these chapters night after night. Drop in the comments how many evenings in a row you've joined us. The air grows thicker with anticipation as we edge toward the climax. In Chapter 26, the final duel and the end of Tom Riddle witnessed the Wand's betrayal, the rebounding curse, and the Dark Lord's final, horrifying unraveling. You won't want to miss how one boy's courage extinguished a millennium of evil. Voldemort gazed down at Severus Snape's mangled body, Nagini's fangs still dripping with his blood, as the serpent coiled triumphantly at her master's feet. In the shattered hall of Hogwarts, amidst the groans of the wounded and the distant roar of spells, he raised the Elder Wand high, convinced that with Snape's death, its unbeatable power now bent fully to his will. He was wrong, catastrophically so, and in the hour that followed his ultimatum to the castle's defenders, the threads of his immortality began to unravel like smoke in the wind. You can almost feel the tension thickening in that great hall, the air heavy with dust from crumbled stone and the metallic tang of spilled blood. Voldemort's voice echoed unnaturally loud, proclaiming victory, urging surrender. But Harry Potter, hidden in the shadows, had just drunk in the final truths from Snape's dying memories. The silver doe, the Patronus that saved lives, the unbreakable vow that twisted fates, and the grim realization Harry himself was the final Horcrux, a fragment of Tom Riddle's soul lodged unwillingly in his scar. With that knowledge burning, Harry slipped away toward the Forbidden Forest, his heart pounding not with fear, but resolve. Deep in those ancient trees, where moonlight barely pierced the canopy, Voldemort found him, surrounded by Death Eaters, Acromantulus skittering at the edges. He unleashed Avada Kedavra in a blaze of green light. Harry fell, seemingly lifeless, his mother's protection echoing once more through Voldemort's own blood in his veins, shielding him from true death. The Dark Lord laughed then, a hollow, serpentine hiss, believing the boy who lived was finally the boy who died. He left the body for Hagrid to carry back, a trophy to break the resistance. But Harry woke in a limbo of King's Cross, that ethereal station suspended between worlds, where Dumbledore's shade waited, not to guide him onward, but to send him back. He returned unseen, a ghost among the living, watching as his own form was paraded before the castle. Voldemort's overconfidence swelled. He shattered the diadem Horcrux, unwittingly with a stray curse during the chaos, not knowing its significance. One by one, his anchors to immortality had fallen, the diary long pierced, the ring cracked, the locket drowned in a cave's icy depths, the cup smashed in Gringotts' vaults, now the diadem reduced to ash. Each destruction chipped away at him, a slow poison seeping into his fractured mind, turning his serpent uncertainty into whispers of doubt that he dared not name. As the battle raged anew, Harry stepped from the crowd into the light, his voice cutting through the din like a blade. The hall fell silent, wands trembling. He spoke of the wand, the ancient relic passed through centuries of blood and betrayal. From Godelot's cellar to Emeric's rampages, now in Voldemort's grasp. But allegiance, Harry revealed, wasn't won by murder alone. Draco Malfoy had disarmed Dumbledore on the Astronomy Tower that fateful night, claiming the wand's loyalty in that still act of defiance. And Harry, he had taken Draco's own Hawthorn wand from Malfoy Manor, years later, sealing the mastery to himself without Voldemort ever suspecting. The revelation hung in the air, a death knell for the self-proclaimed Dark Lord. The Elder Wand's true master was not Snape, nor Dumbledore's killer, but Draco Malfoy and Harry Potter. Voldemort's face twisted, his red eyes narrowing to slits, but the cracks were spreading. Nagini, his last Horcrux, met her end under Neville's blade, the sword of Gryffindor gleaming as it severed her head in the midst of the fray. With every piece of his soul extinguished, the psychological collapse deepened. The once unshakable wizard who had conquered death now felt the void gnawing inside, his magic flickering like a candle in a storm. Paranoia gripped him. Had he always been this hollow? The Horcruxes destroyed one by one, stripped away his illusions of godhood, leaving only Tom Riddle, the orphaned boy who feared oblivion more than anything. They faced off at last in the courtyard, debris crunching underfoot, the castle's ruins framing their duel like a colosseum of forgotten kings. Voldemort, wand raised, poured every ounce of his rage into Avada Kedavra, the killing curse that had felled so many. Green Death hurtled forward, unstoppable in his mind. But Harry met it with Expelliarmus, a simple disarming charm, their spells colliding in a golden web of light. The Elder Wand rebelled against its would-be master. It knew Harry as its true allegiance. The beam rebounded, not with spectacle, but with cruel simplicity. The curse struck Voldemort square in the chest. He crumpled, no grand explosion, no vanishing in shadow. Just a man, broken and mortal, his body withering as the last Horcrux fragment died within Harry. Tom Riddle, boy who sought eternity through splitting his soul 7 ways, ended not as a god, but in the mundane death of a failed wizard, eyes wide with shock, mouth agape, reduced to dust on the cold stone. The final Avada Kedavra failed, because the wand refused him, betrayed by the very legends he chased. The silence that followed was profound, the air shimmering with released magic. What shadows lingered in the wizarding world after this? The trials, the secrets, the cursed echoes of evil that refused to fade entirely. We'll uncover it all next in Chapter 27. The Aftermath and the Cursed Child, where one final twist threatens to resurrect the darkness you thought buried forever, as Voldemort's lifeless form lay twisted on the shattered floor of the Great Hall, his final curse rebounding upon him through the Elder Wand's true allegiance to Harry. A stunned silence fell over the survivors. The air still hummed with the echoes of spells, thick with the scent of scorched stone and fading magic. But in that hush, the wizarding world exhaled its first breath of fragile hope. Harry's victory wasn't just the end of one man. It marked the dawn of a reckoning, where the scars of terror demanded to be cauterized. In the weeks that followed, the Ministry of Magic, once a puppet theatre for pure-blood supremacy, underwent a purge as methodical as it was merciless. Kingsley Shacklebolt, his deep voice steady amid the rubble, assumed the role of interim minister for magic, vowing to root out every trace of Voldemort's corruption. Auras swept through the echoing corridors of the ministry's atrium, their patronuses lighting the way as they dismantled the Muggle-born Registration Commission, burning stacks of damning files that had branded innocents as criminals. The Department of Mysteries, long a vault of forbidden experiments, was sealed off temporarily, its prophecies and time-turners inventoried under Harry's watchful eye to prevent any resurgence of dark rituals. The trials began swiftly in the rebuilt Wizengamot chamber, where ancient benches creaked under the weight of justice, long deferred. Lucius Malfoy, pale and shrunken in his tattered robes, stood first among the high-profile survivors, his silver tongue silenced by the evidence of his own diary, and the dark mark branding his arm. Sentenced to Azkaban for life without parole, he vanished into its chill embrace. His family fortune seized to fund reparations for war victims. Bellatrix Lestrange had perished in the battle, her fanatic laughter extinguished forever, for her husband Rodolphus and brother-in-law Rabastan faced the same fate, their cells warded against any whispered curses. Not all Death Eaters met iron bars. Those who had defected late, like Draco Malfoy, whose wand had unwittingly passed the Elder Wand's mastery, received probation under strict surveillance, their manor turned into a monitored halfway house of atonement. Narcissa Malfoy's lie that saved Harry earned her leniency, a fragile second chance shadowed by whispers of old loyalties. The Carrows, those sadistic teachers from Hogwarts' darkest year, were dragged before the court in chains, their faces twisted in defiance until the Dementor's kiss stripped their souls, leaving husks that served as grim warnings. Lower ranks scattered, some fled to Albania's wilds or beyond the veil of secrecy, but most were hunted down by a revitalized order, their wands snapped in public ceremonies that echoed the 1717 edict against unforgivable curses. Yet even as the ministry gleamed anew with integrity, a deeper shadow lingered, one born not of wands but of blood. Delphini, the secret daughter of Voldemort and Bellatrix Lestrange, conceived in the fevered heights of their twisted devotion, emerged as the cursed heir to an empire of ash. Hidden away after her mother's death at Hogwarts, she was raised in secrecy by the Riddle family remnants, in an orphanage that reeked of mould and forgotten malice. Euphemia Rowell, a distant relative ensnared by the Dark Lord's web, smuggled the infant to safety, whispering tales of her father's glory even as the world celebrated his fall. Delphine grew into a spectre of vengeance, her pale eyes burning with the same serpentine hunger that had consumed Tom Riddle. Augury quill in hand, she pieced together her lineage from scraps, her stolen locks of hair, a faded photograph, the echoes of prophecies that named her the child of the great dark wizard. Her plot unfolded in the shadows of Malfoy Manor, where she infiltrated under the guise of Euphemia's niece, seducing Scorpius Malfoy with promises of rewriting time itself. Armed with a stolen time turner, she sought to sabotage the past, ensuring her father's triumph by preventing Albus Potter and Scorpius from ever altering the timeline that birthed her loneliness. Her capture came in a blur of time's unravelling threads, Harry and his son thwarting her in the dim glow of Godric's Hollow, where Voldemort's first defeat mocked her ambitions. Sent to Azkaban's deepest vaults, Delphine raged against her chains, her half-giant blood. Wait, no, her pure venom undiluted, a reminder that evil doesn't die with its progenitor. She embodied the personal vendetta of dark lineage, her existence a whispered curse that no trial could fully silence. This is why dark magic can never be fully extinguished from the wizarding world. It's woven into the fabric of ambition, fear, and the human, or wizardly, art's capacity for power's seduction. From Herpo the Foul's basilisk egg in Ancient Shadows to Ectoris's blood-soaked Azkaban, history cycles relentlessly. The unforgivable curses may be outlawed, Horcruxes reviled, but the allure persists in quiet corners. The potion brewer's illicit brew, the heirloom locket humming with malice, the whispered imperious in a rival's ear. Houses divide not by blood but by choice. Gryffindors have fallen to the dark mark, Slytherins risen as saviours. Voldemort's end purged the immediate rot. Delphine's imprisonment staunched a fresh wound, but the soil remains fertile. Every generation tempts fate with forbidden tomes like Magick Moste Evile. Every war hero's child eyes the Elder Wand with unspoken longing. As the dust settles on this millennium of shadows, you'll want to stay tuned for our final deep dive. Chapter 28. 1000 Years of Evil Final Analysis, where we unravel the ultimate patterns, the prophecies fulfilled and broken, and what it all means for the wizards who come after. Drift deeper now, and let these echoes fade into dreams, even as the Ministry rebuilt itself from the ashes of Voldemort's war. Purging the last echoes of Death Eater influence, and confining threats like Delphine to the shadows of legend, one question lingers in the halls of Hogwarts and the streets of Diagon Alley. How did 1000 years of darkness shape the wizarding world we know today? Herpo the Foul stands as the ancient architect of evil, his basilisk's venomous hiss echoing through centuries. From that first forbidden egg hatched beneath the toad, he didn't just dabble in death. He fractured his soul into a Horcrux, birthing a curse that would tempt every power-hungry wizard after him. His legacy is the raw blueprint of dark magic. Primal, experimental, unrepentant, leaving behind serpents that slithered into Slytherin's chamber, and poisons that still seep from forgotten tomes. Then came Grindelwald, the visionary storm that swept across continents, his silver tongue promising a new order where wizards ruled muggles openly, all for the so-called greater good. He chased the Deathly Hallows not for personal eternity, but to forge an unbreakable supremacy, nearly reducing Paris to rubble in 1927. His shadow lingers in the scars of global wizarding treaties, a reminder that ideology wrapped in charisma can rally armies faster than any killing curse. Voldemort, born Tom Riddle, twisted these threads into a noose around his own world. Where Herpo invented the Horcrux, Voldemort shattered his soul 7 times, crafting immortality from murder after murder. Grindelwald dreamed of Muggle subjugation. Voldemort enforced it through blood purity, his half-blood hypocrisy fueling a civil war that tore Britain apart. His reign institutionalized terror, the Muggle-born Registration Commission, the taboo on his name, leaving a fractured society where even victors whisper his anagram in fear. Compare their legacies side by side, and patterns emerge like runes on an ancient wand. Herpo's innovations became Grindelwald's rhetoric, which Voldemort weaponized into genocide. Herpo's basilisk army inspired Voldemort's inferi hordes. Grindelwald's international cabal mirrored the Death Eater's inner circle. Yet each fell not to superior magic, but to the unraveling of their own hubris. Godelot slain by his son over the Elder Wand. Emer the Evil cut down after terrorizing England's south. Echrisdis mad in his Azkaban lair. Voldemort's end came in that May 1998 duel. His wand betraying him as Harry's disarming spell from Malfoy Manor proved its true master. These dark lords, spanning from before 100 AD to the late 20th century, wove recurring themes through their reigns. Blood purity as a shield against imagined dilution, immortality as the ultimate conquest over mortality, and the fear of the unknown driving them to dominate what they could not control. Herpo feared death's finality, so he pioneered soul-splitting. Grindelwald dreaded a hidden Muggle uprising, envisioning wizards as benevolent overlords. Voldemort obsessed over pure blood lineage to mask his own mudblood mother, his Horcruxes a frantic grasp at forever amid the terror of oblivion. That fear of the Muggle world beyond the statute of secrecy, of dark creatures like basilisks slipping their leashes, of prophecies whispering fates they couldn't rewrite, fueled curses from Cruciatus to Avada Kedavra, potions that twisted flesh, and fortresses like Azkaban that drank evil like wine. House loyalties offer no sanctuary from this cycle. Dark wizards slithered from every founding pillar. Pettigrew the Gryffindor traitor, Quirrell the Ravenclaw possessed, Slytherins like Regulus and Snape who turned against the tide. The unforgivable curses, banned in 1717, persisted because the wizarding world's divisions, pure blood elitism clashing with Muggle-born rise, secrecy breeding isolation, kept the soil fertile for new seeds of hate. Why then does the wizarding world remain so vulnerable to the next Dark Lord? Ministries rise and fall, but the temptations endure. The allure of power in a veiled society, where one wand can topple governments. Horcruxes may be reviled, but whispers of immortality echo in every healer's failed resurrection. Blood purity debates simmer in pure blood parlours, even post-Voldemort. And that primal fear, the unknown Muggle technology advancing unchecked, dark artifacts buried in Gringotts vaults, forgotten grimoires like Magick Moste Evile gathering dust, ensures the next Herpo or Riddle need only speak the right promises to awaken the shadows again. As the Elder Wand rests dormant and Nagini's venom fades from memory, remember this: evil doesn't die with its master. It evolves, waiting in the quiet corners of history for the fearful to give it form once more. Thank you for journeying through these 1,000 years of evil with me. If tonight's chapter lulled you toward sleep, drop a comment on how many nights you've joined us in a row. Sweet dreams. What did you think of this journey? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this changed your perspective or taught you something new, consider subscribing for more mind-expanding content. And if you know someone who would find this as fascinating as you did, share it with them. These are the kind of conversations that matter.